final minutes of preparation before the start of an IndyCar race. Of the Michigan 500. And it's brought to you by Miller Brewing Company, brewers of Miller High Life beer. If you've got the time, we've got the beer. And by Sure Anti-Perspirant in 3 convenient forms. They'll help keep you dry all day. And by Kemper and the independent insurance agents who represent us. For all your insurance needs, ride with Kemper. And by the new Speed Stick Super Dry Anti-Perspirant. Goes on so dry you can get dressed right away. Speed Stick, 5 minutes. And today, the summer season comes to you live from Brooklyn, Michigan, home of the Michigan International Speedway. Today, the Michigan 500 for Indy cars. Hello, everyone. I'm Bruce Jenner, and we've got an exciting show for you here on the summer season. Today, it's the first live television broadcast ever of a IndyCar 500-mile race, and I know the drivers are ready, and everybody involved with the production is excited about bringing you this show. And today, if time and circumstances permit, we're also going to do a baseball strike update and some thoroughbred racing from England. But we've got a lot of things to do today, so let's get on the move. Right now, up to our hosts, Charlie Jones and Paul Page.
Hi, thank you, Bruce. It seems like only a week ago, Paul, that we were standing right here before we were rudely interrupted by Mother Nature. So we had to wait 6 extra days for television sports history. And that, of course, the Michigan 500, the first live flag-to-flag coverage of an IndyCar race at a distance of 500 miles.
A 500-mile race is always an exciting thing. This one especially so, because it's the inaugural event. And perhaps more exciting for the drivers and the crews is the purse is over $500,000, over $100,000 to the winner. And that is second only to the purse offered at the Indianapolis 500.
The weather here today, it is warm, muggy, a bit hazy, but the sun is out. That is different than it was last Sunday when this race was scheduled and we were inundated by the rain.
Well, the rain, of course, caused problems for the drivers and the crews. It meant an extra week here. That's an added expense. It also compressed the rest of the schedule for them, less preparation time for the next race. The rain we thought was going to end early, but then it didn't. The clouds opened up and we had rain that rained out the first day. The crews have now had a week to work on the cars. They've also had 1 day of practice. For some, that was a help. For others, a hindrance.
Yeah, if we'd have started the race last weekend and just went directly into the race like we were planning on, we'd have had some problems during the race. So we went out in this hour practice session this morning. We found out some brackets were breaking it to support the tunnels on the side pods on the side of the car. And just lucky for us that we did have another practice session before the race.
Well, I'm quite sure they gained some, because we was all set to go Sunday, and at least they got to feel what the track was like the day after the rain and all. So we're going to have to start kind of cold turkey. It's going to hurt us a little bit.
Well, we were ready to go racing when the gun was going to fly, but we were sort of happy to see it because we didn't have as much time on the track as some of the teams, and so it gave us an opportunity to look at some things and make a couple little variations and come back and even be a little quicker this week than we were last week.
It is also the end of a lot of preparation for championship auto race teams. They have a 2-year history. They have been working very, very hard, and NBC has been there over most of the history. So let's go back 2 years and take a look at the history of championship auto race teams. Bobby Unser became CART's first pole sitter, driving a new design called Ground Effects. Gordon Johncock became CART's first winner. In July of that year, here at Michigan, Johncock won again in a twin race. Danny Ongais was, as always, fast, but suffered bad luck and sent Johnny Rutherford spinning with him. Bobby Unser added another win to his record. In 1980, Johnny Rutherford picked up the seat in the Chaparral and started picking up victories. Lone Star JR spent most of 1980 battling with Bobby Unser. At the Michigan 200, Rutherford proved that he and the ground effect Chaparral were the combination to beat. At Milwaukee last year, it was Rutherford and Unser, hammer and tong. But it was Al Unser that finally got his new Longhorn racer working and moved into first place, only to have a wheel come off and end his day against the wall. In winner's circle, it was JR once again. The last race of the season was at Phoenix, and the script was the same. Bobby Unser and Johnny Rutherford as co-favorites. The Chaparral flew out in front, and then, without warning, up into the air. It was a miracle that Johnny was not seriously injured. When the race resumed, it was Tom Sneva that took home the victory, and in his hospital bed, Johnny Rutherford was crowned with his first national championship. 1981 started at Phoenix with some new faces. The likable young Mexican, Jose Legarza. He impressed the crowd and the racing fraternity. After 150 miles, though, it was Johnny Rutherford once again. At Atlanta 3 weeks ago, the cast of characters changed. Rick Mears drove 2 brilliant races to win the Atlanta Twin 125s, despite a last lap attempt by Mario Andretti.
250 laps over this 2-mile oval, and now we're going to turn it over to the president of the company that sponsors this race, Donald Melville, and racing's most famous command.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
Begins to build on the grid for the start of the Michigan 500. Each of these cars roars out its challenge to one another. Over 25,000 horsepower represented by these machines. The crews raising their hands, indicating that they are now ready to go. Pancho Carter sitting so calmly in his machine. Johnny Rutherford is ready. We're ready for the start of the Michigan 500.
On the front row, Tom Sneva on the pole. Johnny Rutherford and Rick Mears will be outside of him. There's Steve Krisiloff. He is driving the machine of Mario Andretti. Krisiloff still looking for his first win as the cars start to very slowly edge out of the pits. This will be the first of 3 laps before we see the green flag. A race of 500 miles, a story could well be told in the pits. Bruce Jenner is there, as is Gary Gerould. Let's go down to Gary right now.
Charlie, I'll tell you, these crews, these drivers, for the second time in a week, now anxiously awaiting this very moment. The intensity level way up. They're looking to something that's never been experienced before. The prospect of 500 miles on the banks of Michigan International Speedway. Track temperature just minutes ago, 100 degrees. That's almost ideal. It should not be any type of a problem. But the demands of the racetrack are something else. And with that aspect of the story, let's go to our colleague in the pits, Bruce Jenner.
Gary, the reason this track is difficult for him, being banked, is on a conventional flat track, the cars in the turn are forced centrifugally to the outside of the turn. Now that same turn is banked. That centrifugal force now pushes the car down onto the track. In fact, yesterday I was out driving around the track. You could see places where actually the cars have been pushed down so hard onto the track that they had dug some of the pavement up from underneath. So it's going to be difficult for these cars to go 500 miles on this banked track. All right, let's go back up to Charlie.
37 cars on the starting grid. All of the top drivers are here with the exception of Andretti and Ongayas. So right now, let's set the field for the Michigan 500.
The front row qualified at better than 200 miles an hour. Tom Sneva on the pole at 201.359. A March, a new car this year. The defending national champion Johnny Rutherford is in the center of the row, car number 1, the yellow Chaparral. Some think the best starting position is the outside of the row. Rick Mears is there and eager to lead the first lap.
In the second row, we have a total of 67 wins. Inside in car number 5 in his 8th year racing Indy cars, Pancho Carter. He has not won. In the middle is Steve Krisiloff in car number 40. That is Mario Andretti's car. Krisiloff is yet to win. And outside number 14, A.J. Foyt. 67 wins, 4-time Indianapolis champion.
Row 3 averages 196 miles an hour. A happy but surprised Bill Alsop is on the inside, and his team Penske number 7. The factory March entry is in the middle of Row 3. Bill Whittington is driving his first IndyCar ride on the high banks. The outside, Bobby Unser. Mechanical problems slow disqualification, but he should move up fast at the start.
His brother Al Unser is inside on row 4, and Al has 36 wins to his credit. In the middle is the rookie, Kevin Colgan. Yet to win, but still the 5th leading money winner this year. And outside is Mike Mosley, who won at Milwaukee this year in car number 48.
On the inside of the 5th row, with 3 career victories at this track, car number 20, Gordon Johncock. He should make an early move to the front. And then if he is smart, Mike Chandler in number 74 will follow Johncock through. Then Billy Engelhart on the outside of the row should fall in behind Chandler.
Now let's take a look at the rest of the field. In row 6, Larry Cannon, Bob Lazier, and Gary Bettenhausen. We expect Gary to be up among the early leaders. The 7th row inside is Josely Garza, the Rookie of the Year at Indianapolis this year. The 2nd Bettenhausen Tony is there, as is the veteran Tom Bigelow.
There are 2 stock blocks in the 8th row, those of Jerry Carl and Herm Johnson. Larry Dixon has a conventional powered Cosworth machine. We expect him to move up early. In the 9th row, Vern Schupan has a Cosworth engine. Bill Vukovich and Dick Ferguson both have Offenhauser 4-cylinder powered machines.
In row 10, the rookie is in the middle. That is Chip Meade. The veteran, Saul Walter, he is on the inside, and watch car number 21 to make an early move. Outside is Dick Simon. In row 11, the rookie is inside. That is Scott Brayton in car number 37. The veterans are Roger Rager and Cliff Hugo.
In the 12th and 13th row, we have those cars that have been added by the promoter's option. In the 12th row, Steve Chassie and Bill Tempero were the alternates. Harry McDonald got into the race as a result of his position in finishing a qualifying race, as did the lone car in the 13th row, Phil Kaliva.
In car number 7, Bill Alsop. The camera is on board, and this is what it looks like.
An incredible picture. That is just about 4 inches off the track surface. The camera down in the nose of the car. You're looking at it live. There is Bill Alsop. The camera in his car, the first time it has ever been done in an Indy-type car.
Waving to the crowds, this is the shot. He is inside in row 3. This is live from the car of Bill Alsop.
Just in front, in the center of the front row, you can see the bright yellow of Johnny Rutherford's cars. The front row perfectly aligned. Tom Sneva on the pole, Johnny Rutherford alongside. The field is looking in just perfect condition.
This track is banked all the way around. The back straight is banked at 5 degrees. That's the only straight there is. The turns are banked at 18 degrees. The front straight, although it flattens out when you look at it, is banked at 12 degrees.
The pace car has now turned off its yellow flashing lights, and that means that we are ready for a start. Currently here it is 82 degrees. The humidity up a bit at 69%. There's 30% chance of precipitation. It is cloudy and overcast. The track surface temperature is just over 100 degrees.
The front row, Tom Sneve on the pole, Johnny Rutherford, and then Rick Mears. Second row is Pancho Carter, Steve Krisloff, and A.J. Foyt. Third row, Bill Alsop, Bill Whittington, and Bobby Unser as we await the green flag. They come between turns 3 and turn 4. And we look for the second lap to be over 200 miles an hour today.
The pace car is off the race course. The pole sitter, Tom Sneva, brings them down. He's waiting for the green flag. The starter gives the green flag, and the first Michigan 500 for Indy cars is underway as Tom Sneva moves out in the front.
Rutherford goes behind him and stays high through the first turn, and dropping back is Rick Mears. It is Sneva and Rutherford in the early going. As they go through turn 2, Rutherford tucks right in behind Tom Sneva.
Tom Sneva leads down the backstretch. It's Johnny Rutherford right behind him, and Steve Krisloff has moved up to do battle with Rick Mears in first place. But here is 1 and 2. Tom Sneva and Johnny Rutherford through the first turn, the second turn, now through the third, heading through the fourth, and Sneva is showing a definite advantage here in the early going as Tom Sneva comes around to lead the first of 250 laps. It's Johnny Rutherford in second place, Steve Krisloff in third, Rick Mears is in fourth.
Pancho Carter follows him, A.J. Foyt, Bill Alsop in that order.
Ever so smoothly now as Tom Sneva begins to pull out just a bit more from second place Johnny Rutherford. We've got trouble in turn number 2. A car sliding. Got up high and then back on the race course. So in the first lap, we have a yellow flag at the conclusion of lap number 1. The yellow flag is out. Tom Sneva will slow. Apparently, Larry Cannon got sideways in the second turn. So Tom Sneva comes down across the line, acknowledging the yellow flag. Johnny Rutherford right behind him. A lap and a quarter, Charlie, and we have our first yellow.
We were surprised in reality that it lasted that long. We thought we might have one on the first lap.
Well, there was a lot of concern for the start of this race with 3 abreast, 37 cars, crowded, a high-speed race course, and they're not really sure, as they would like to be, about the surface of this racetrack. It rained. That took all of the surface that was ground in the early practice away. They had a very short practice, and so now they have to find out about the track.
Larry Cannon into the pits. He was the one that had the problem. Left 11th year of Champ Car Racing. Still has no wins, and he is 44 years of age. I mention that because this is not a young man's sport.
No, it's certainly not. The men who have been winning for so long in the past few years all have a great deal of age on them. A great deal to someone like me. To you, Charlie, maybe not so much.
Well, they're very young. They're kids.
Johnny Rutherford, Bobby Unser, Al Unser, all of them well up over their 40s. Bobby Unser is 47 years old.
In fact, a third of the field is 40 or over. The reason being the growth of safety in auto racing. They're simply living a lot longer.
There's no question about that. Bobby Unser will joke about it, but it's a very serious comment that the cars are much safer and therefore the survival rate seems to be higher. So the field coming around now, that is Tom Sneva out in front, Johnny Rutherford tucked in right behind him. They should be able to come back to the green flag rather rapidly as Cannon was able to bring the car in. A quick check of the race course for debris, putting the emergency equipment back in place, and then we should be able to go right back to green flag racing.
And the official standings for the top 5 through 3 laps, of course, 2 of them being under the yellow. Sneva, Rutherford, Krisiloff, Mears, and then Carter.
With a pole sitter, 201.359 miles an hour. Now, in the older days, with a higher boost into these turbocharged engines, Tom Sneva has the track record from those earlier times at over 211 miles an hour. So he is now ready to bring his machine down through the third turn. Johnny Rutherford sits in right behind them, and already they will begin to line themselves up so they are prepared for the start. The pace car has pulled into the pit area, and Tom Sneva now begins to pick up the power and the speed, and Johnny Rutherford doesn't want to let him get too far away. Rutherford is beginning to tuck in right behind Tom Sneva. Sneva is coming off the 4th turn, looking for the green flag. The green flag is out, and once again we are racing at Michigan International Speedway.
So it is Rutherford going high after Sneva turn 1, and Johnny has up. So Rutherford moves into first place with Sneva running second. Krisiloff is running third. He was challenged by Rick Mears, but he held Mears off, and he is in 4th place. So Rutherford leads for the first time.
Another car spinning in front of the field in the second turn, up toward the wall.
That is Bill Whittington, I believe, car number 94.
It was Whittington that we expected so much out of in the early going. You can see he was hit, and hit hard. He is still in the cockpit of the car. The front right wheel is sitting askew. The wing is askew. Whittington moving his head. Now he's apparently going to try and release the brake and let the car roll down off the banking so that he can get out of the way. So right off the top, 2 problems. Larry Cannon, who was the cause of the first yellow light, moves back into the competition, but Bill Whittington had to let his number 94 roll off of the high banking and come to a stop. He will occupy the last position because he is the first car officially out of the day. That car will not race. Let's try and look at it one more time. Whittington just simply lost it high, and there was a tense moment here as Whittington was in front of a number of cars that had to duck very low to get past him. Fortunately, there was no contact with other equipment. Whittington stopped right there and later let the car roll down off of the racetrack.
Any particular reason the early problems have been in turn 2?
Well, again, it's a situation where we don't know exactly what this race course is doing. There was a short practice yesterday, but the rain of last week washed all of the rubber off the race course, and so they're running a little hard, a little hot. They're not really sure where the racetrack is this early. They better find it pretty quick.
Bill Alsop with the onboard camera.
Look at that, right across the front. incredible shot from the live onboard camera as Bill Whittington lost it right in front of Bill Alsop, and that's when the driver really sucks in the breath. And what you have to do, Charlie, is simply drive on your line.
Here are the official standings through lap number 6. Rutherford leads it. We'll be back in a moment.
Johncock got problem created by Whittington and smacked something. His car is now on the hook in turn 3, and Gordon Johncock, who was certainly planning to do very well in this race and had every opportunity, he has after all won 3 major events here, is out of the race very, very early on. Let's go down to the pits now and Gary Gerould.
Paul, we're here with Jim McGee, the crew chief for Patrick Racing, and Jim's been anxiously watching a monitor trying to ascertain just what's happened. Jim, your impressions from your radio conversation with Gordy, any indication as to what happened there?
Well, evidently Whittington spun in front of him, and Gordy just caught him trying to miss him, so he said it took the right front wheel and damaged it, so that kind of puts us out.
Really an awful tough way to be starting an afternoon that I know you all were looking forward to so much.
Yeah, we made some changes in the car, and Gordy was pretty satisfied with it the first couple of laps that we run, so you know, we were looking forward to running a little bit longer.
All right, thank you, Jim. I know it's a tough day for you. Let's swing to the other end of the pit now and Bruce Jenner.
Yeah, Gary, I'm with Bill Burton, Larry Cannon's crew chief, and what happened in that he's been in already 3 times?
We've got a wing situation. Yesterday we was running real good with the wings the way they were. Today we've created some more heat out on the racetrack, and the car is just not like it was yesterday, so we're having a wing problem. We've raised the rear wing 1 turn up. We lowered the wing 3 turns down, and now we put it back up to where it is, so we're going to go ahead and try it this way. We've got a real wing problem here, and I don't know what's going on.
Did Larry say that the track was slippery because turn 2 seems to be giving everybody trouble?
Yes, it's a little slippery out there. As you can see, it's a lot hotter today, and that creates problems with right on down the line from engines right on down.
All right, thanks a lot, Bill. Let's go back to Charlie.
All right, thank you, Bruce. Drivers will tell you that if an accident happens in front of you, drive right at it because the car will be gone. So you can see the onboard camera, Bill Alsop, the accident in front. He drives right at the accident and misses the car.
And gets through cleanly. Unfortunately, Gordon Johncock did not. The lights are off on the pace car. They have cleaned up that debris from Bill Whittington's accident, and they are ready to go. That's too bad for Bill Whittington because in yesterday's practice, he was running a full mile an hour faster than he qualified the car. So it has to be a sad moment for Whittington, as well as for Gordon Johncock, who really wanted to do well here, certainly had the capability. Those 2 cars out of the race in the early going. The pace car is off the race course, and now they're bringing them down to the green. This time it is Johnny Rutherford that will lead them to the green flag.
And jumping underneath Rutherford is Tom Sneva, and Rutherford stays high, and Rutherford holds him off down the front straight, which is banked. It is banked at 12 degrees as Rutherford goes into turn 1. Sneva is running second. Krisiloff is third. Rick Mears is running fourth, and then 3 cars side by side are battling for fifth as they sort it out in the middle of the pack.
Now Tom Sneva begins to close ever so much on the back of Johnny Rutherford's car, and Sneva beginning to make a charge as they head for the 3rd turn. Sneva a bit lower on the race course. He's been able to run lower in the corners than Rutherford, but not this time. Rutherford slides her high at over 190 miles an hour. Here comes Sneva making his charge. Rutherford just a bit too high as Sneva is getting around Rutherford, and Sneva will come around and lead lap number 10. So Tom Sneva leading once again, though they are still battling going into the 1st turn. It is Sneva continuing to lead Rutherford, and they are beginning to disappear from Steve Krisiloff and Rick Mears and a group of cars that are sitting back now almost 150 yards behind them.
Rutherford going through turn 2 backed off a little bit from Sneva. So Sneva now has opened a gap the length of a football field. And we point that out because in that back straight, if you blink your eye 1 time, you have gone 100 yards.
Here is the battle behind the leaders as we see Sneva and Rutherford coming by in the bottom of your picture. But here is Steve Krisiloff, Rick Mears, Pancho Carter, and Mike Mosley. That is really a battle for 3rd place as Mosley goes low and now sets his sight on the back end of Krisiloff's car. Mosley is in a stock block powered Eagle, a Dan Gurney design and creation, a stock block they've worked very hard on, and it is beginning to pay off now. Though the durability of this engine has still been in question, certainly its ability to race is not in question. The battle for 3rd. Mike Mosley pulling down just inside Steve Krisiloff, and in the 1st turn forces his way past. So now Mike Mosley has moved into 3rd.
Mike Mosley with 5 victories to his credit in his IndyCar racing career, has 1 win this year, and that was at Milwaukee. So it is Tom Sneva, Johnny Rutherford, and then Mike Mosley, followed by Steve Krisloff. They are the top 4 cars.
Mike Mosley still in 3rd place and pulling away from Steve Krisloff, but now we're seeing a challenge on Krisloff's machine as Bobby Unser begins to move up through the field. Mike Mosley will be a question mark throughout the afternoon. There is 4th place. Krisloff and Bobby Unser beginning to close on him. So it will be an entire afternoon, Charlie. The question will be whether or not the cars will live. They say they want to pace their way through the race. Mike Mosley now pulling up to challenge Johnny Rutherford in the first turn. It's a challenge for 2nd place. There is Mosley moving past Johnny Rutherford and now has set his sights on the leader, Tom Sneva.
So it is Tom Sneva now, Mike Mosley 2nd. Johnny Rutherford is running 3rd, a 3-way battle for 4th. Sneva continues to lead very comfortably. Pancho Carter challenging Steve Krisloff. Carter is running in 5th place.
Carter and Krisloff getting in quite an argument now for 5th place as Carter on the high side and his number 5 machine forces its way past Steve Krisloff. Moving up right behind on the inside now is Rick Mears. So they're locked in battle here for this position as well as up in the lead. Now that they have gotten clear of their yellow flag problems in the start, the race has begun to settle down and run smoothly. And we're seeing a lot of battling. Here's 1st and 2nd. Tom Sneva on the left of your screen. Mike Mosley in the stock block, who won the last kart race at Milwaukee just 2 weeks ago and is doing very, very well here today. That stock block closes up on the back. Looking back in the field now, here is the battle for 5th place as Steve Krisloff is trying to hold off Rick Mears, who is sitting right behind him, and Rick's teammate Bobby Unser pulls in to join this battle. So team cars of Roger Penske side by side, both with their sights set on Steve Krisloff.
We have 15 laps complete. It's a 250-lap race, so a lot of racing still to go, 235 laps left. We are live from the Michigan International Speedway. This is the Michigan 500, the first time in television sports history that an IndyCar race at 500 miles has been carried live.
Continuing to watch battles back in the pack, and we will try to bring them to you as they become available to us. Here is Steve Krisloff as he is still trying to hold off both Rick Mears and Bobby Unser. And it is quite a fight that he is having to just hold on to that 5th place position. Currently the leader is Tom Sneva. Mike Mosley has moved up into 2nd place. Johnny Rutherford dropped back to 3rd. And now Mosley beginning to close even more on the back end of Tom Sneva's car. So a tremendous battle for the lead. And down in Dan Gurney's pits, let's go to Bruce Jenner.
I'm with Mike Mosley's crew chief right now, designer of the car, a man who's no stranger to racing, Dan Gurney. And Mike, right now, the car is running beautifully.
Yes, he is. I'm a little bit surprised at how rapidly he's going. I know he's trying to be comfortable, and we realize it's a long race. We're very happy where he is, though.
Do you think the car has a long enough fuse to make it?
Well, it's as long as we know how to make, and we're going to find out. I don't think anyone knows at this point. We sure hope so.
Your guys are going to win.
Well, that's what it takes. You have to go all the way.
Okay, good luck to you.
Thank you, Bruce.
And now they work their way through lap traffic through turn 3 and head for turn 4. Mike Mosley in car number 48 is currently running 2nd. Tom Sneva in car number 2 is the leader. Johnny Rutherford in car number 1, who was inside in the first row, led in the early going. It was Sneva, then Rutherford, and then Sneva back in the lead.
There's less than half a second now separating these two cars. Barely the wink of an eye as Tom Sneva threads himself past Steve Chassis in the lap traffic, and Mike Mosley follows right on through. As a result of the yellow flags in the early going, they are only averaging just over 110 miles an hour. At lap number 10, they were averaging 97.56 miles an hour. Now Mike Mosley continues his bid to lead this inaugural Michigan 500. But Tom Sneva is doing everything he can to prevent it. Barely half a second, actually closing now to 0.25, 25 one-hundredths of a second separating the cars. Billy Engelhart, number 29, pulls in for some service. That is early for a pit stop. We really don't expect stops for fuel until lap 30. So if Engelhart is in this early, there is probably something wrong with the machine. The positions number 1 and 2 remain the same. Tom Sneva and Mike Mosley.
Tom Sneva, he is one of the young Titans that Paul has talked about. He's 33 years of age, 11th year for riding Champ cars. He has a total of 4 wins. Twice he has been national champion. Tom Sneva, car number 2.
Mike Mosley has been working very hard with Dan Gurney on this incredible machine that they have built, the stock block powered Eagle. They've worked very hard and at some great expense with that stock block to try and develop it. They are in hopes that once the engine is developed, that it will only cost about $20,000 to be able to race, as compared with the between $37,000 and $45,000 of the Cosworth engine. The development has been very costly. Dan Gurney has had some very hard times, but it's a pleasure to see this fine driver and fine team here at Michigan International Speedway. Mike Mosley now sitting right on the back end of Tom Sneva's car. 21 laps are now complete. Mosley, a quiet young gentleman in racing. He has enjoyed his racing so much, but he is rather peaceful about it. He doesn't brag. He sits quietly and waits. He lets the race car do his talking.
Bill Whittington went out of the race early, and he's now with Gary Gerould. Gary?
Well, here's Bill Whittington, and Bill, we're glad to see that you're all right. Any indication of what the problem was?
No, first indication, I just want to get out of there. You know, those cars coming by so fast that you don't really have time to look at it and see what happened. You know, it just kind of stares your hair on end.
You had run so well. You have limited experience in these type of cars. Your first time at this track, you were second fast yesterday. This has to be a great disappointment.
I don't know. You know, it's hard to say.
Well, we appreciate the fact that you're all right, that you stood by. We'll go back up to the booth now.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Gary. Tom Sneva continuing to lead Mike Mosley, and Mosley tries Sneva underneath as they come through the turn. Sneva holds him off, but Mosley has position and he slips in behind him. They run into lap traffic.
Report coming up from the pit area. Since we had mentioned Billy Engelhart into the pits, they have pushed the car behind the wall, and Billy Engelhart is out of the race. Tom Sneva with Mike Mosley chasing him. We should not be that far from a pit stop now. 23 laps are now complete. Roger Penske told us yesterday he wants to be conservative and get his cars in at lap 30.
So we'll be looking forward to the pits coming in just a few laps.
Mike Mosley and Tom Sneva going around slower traffic, but Sneva is able to hold them off as they come around Jerry Carl. It looked for a moment like Mosley might have picked up first place, but Sneva still maintains first.
So it is Sneva and Mike Mosley locked in the battle in the early going. 24 laps complete. 226 laps to go. Sneva and Mosley.
They have remained in these relative positions quite steadily through the race, coming up, trying one another, and then dropping back. Let's go down to the pit area where Gary Gerould now has Gordon Johncock.
Thank you, Paul. Gordy, what happened? We understand you were in the traffic when the car spun.
Whittington spun in the center of one.
Gordon, we've got a problem here, I believe, in the track. We're going to go back up to the booth.
We've got all kinds of problems between turn 1 and turn 2. A car went high in trouble. Another car trying to stay away from him came low and spun into the infield.
Pancho Carter down on the grass. That is Larry Dixon sitting up high trying to get restarted. It looked to me like an engine let go. This should bring in pit stops. It's an ideal time for everybody. And indeed, Salt Walther and Steve Chassie have come in. Now we're watching to see if the leaders will come in. First and second place, both heading down the pit road and for their pits. Tom Sneva leads Mike Mosley in. The crews are ready. The tires are laid out. Now Tom Sneva ducks in. He's ready for some fast service. Johnny Rutherford is also in. Mike Mosley is in. Steve Krisiloff. So all of the front-running cars, unfortunately, Pancho Carter, who was running in the first 5, is a part of the accident in the second turn. And so now, as Tom Sneva is first to get away, the lead is being picked up on the race course. Tom Sneva will have to move to get out of this pit as fast as he can. The leader at this moment is Bill Alsop. So he, as a result of not pitting while the rest of the leaders are in, Alsop has picked up the lead.
A.J. Foyt also came in on a pit stop. Dick Simon came in. He's headed back out. So we're still under the yellow. with 26 laps complete.
Charlie will have to wait and watch and see what Alsop decides. He's the leader at the moment by nature of this pit stop. He's not made a stop. The rest of the leaders have. And let's see if that onboard camera might be working. It should be exciting. There you see it right behind the pace car. Alsop moving into position, and we'll see if he peels off now and heads down into the pit. Indeed, he does. Bill Alsop heading down that pit road, staring head-on into the pit area at about 150 miles an hour, and he'll grind it to a stop and chalk it over into position. There's his crew member ready as they come to a stop, and Bill Alsop is in the pits. That sign held up to tell him exactly where to stop so that all of the lines reach the car. Alsop's machine up in the air. Work being done on it. No change of tires. They fuel it, and Bill Alsop will roll underway once again. He's faltered there. It looked like that engine was not start.
We'll be back with more of the Michigan fire. We have a fire in Herm Johnson's pit. It started when he was fueling, and it spread behind the wall.
Johnson was in for a regular refuel, and then suddenly the car burst into flame, and now they have a fire that is burning all around the fuel tank in Herm Johnson's pit. We had some crew members suffering some slight injury. We don't have any indication as to their injury. It did not look as if Johnson was injured, but look at this tremendous fire as the entire pit goes up. They have been trying to fight it now for almost a minute. There was an explosion. An explosion as one of the tanks went. Apparently Herm Johnson's tank let go at the front. Now most of the people moved away, but an explosion in the pits as Herm Johnson's tank did catch fire, and a tire let go. We don't know if the explosion was the result of a tire or is the tank. The tank looks to be intact. They have done everything they can to keep the fire from spreading. The scoring stand is what is actually showing the most fire, though you can't see an alcohol fire, and there is no telling where else there might be fire burning. That white smoke that you're seeing is the Purple K powder that they use to fight the fire.
And in reality, it smothers the fire, draws the oxygen out, and this is something that they've always been afraid of wherever championship cars run.
Now they have closed the pits as a result of this fire. The pits are completely blocked. The cars will have to stay on the course. That brings the question. If I didn't bring my car in for a stop, what happens to me if I run out of fuel on the racetrack? I can't get to my pit. They continue to fight this fire. This has been what they have been afraid of in all of IndyCar racing for so long. A major fire in the pits. They're now bringing in heavy apparatus, big fire trucks coming in. Let's go down to Bruce Jenner, who's on the scene.
Down here in the pits right now, pandemonium has just broke out. It looks like his pit has completely gone up, and the fire tanks, and the tanks are on fire right now. They're trying to put it out. They've got about 4 or 5 units, a lot of people working around there, but it's a lot of pandemonium. Everybody's just sort of clearing out of the area and trying to see what happens. But right now, it's a terrible sight from down here. Charlie?
All right, Bruce, it seems as if they may have it a little under control, but it is still burning. Let's go back moments ago to how it started. Now let's go down to Gary.
Here's Herm Johnson. Herm, I know you're walking in to get some emergency attention. Any idea what happened on that stop?
I just saw a fuel spill and it flared up and it was just burning. And
we got to go, Gary.
We got a couple a lot hurt worse than me.
All right, thank you, Herm Johnson. They're taking him in for some emergency aid at this point. He seems to be all right. He has some superficial burns, it would appear, around the face. He'll get some emergency treatment here, and we'll try to update the information, of course, as it's available.
You see here now the replay of that fire. That is his refueler. After the fire at Indianapolis, several of the crews bought new helmets to try and prevent the crew members from being burned in case this happened in a refuel. Apparently, it did some good, though obviously by the way he was jumping around, he was suffering from the heat, probably being burned to a small degree. I want to be very careful, Charlie, not to alarm anyone until we know exactly what happened. The red flag is about to be displayed at Michigan International Speedway. The red flag is out. They are stopping this race. This will change the strategies of everybody drastically.
So here's the situation. We have officially 29 laps complete of 250 laps at the Michigan 500. So we'll take a timeout, and we'll be back here to pick up the race, which is currently under the red flag. We'll be back in a moment.
We're back at Michigan International Speedway, where we have had a tremendous fire in the pits. It started when Herm Johnson's car caught fire during refueling. It spread rapidly to the tank. that refuels Herm Johnson's car and then spread up and down the pit area. We had a loud report, a blast from the pits that for a moment we thought was a tank going up. It turned out instead to be a tire exploding, was our latest report. But you can see the tank actually moved a bit as part of the hose caught fire and then exploded. Fortunately, there is a safety shutoff valve between the hose and the front of the tank, so the tank still has its integrity. But we have had injuries here. We have stopped the race. We have closed off the pit area, and they have several individuals who have been injured as a result of this. At least one was the refueler from Herm Johnson's machine.
And in addition, the fire has spread up and down the pits as far as 4 or 5 pits away. Some of the crew members have caught fire and then have been put out, had the fire put out around them. Now let's go down to Bruce Jenner. Bruce?
Charlie, Johnny Rutherford is with me, and Johnny, this is something you don't like to see in racing.
No, you really don't. Of course, it's especially in the pits where there are so many people confined and gathered, it makes it a little tough, and you wonder where it is. Immediately my thoughts were to my pit and Betty and what might be going on there, but they were far enough away. Jim Hall, the owner, told me that they weren't in any danger. But it's really a shame, and I think it's time we really had an inquiry into
do you think they should look in to see if they can do something about this?
Yes, definitely.
Because I was down there at the pits, and it looked like when they were pulling the fueler off, a lot like what happened to Mears, the gas spread all over, and then they were in trouble, and it spread on the ground and spread everywhere, and it started going from one pit to the next.
Yes, and that's a problem. We obviously have got to look at the way we refuel these cars and make them better.
All right, how was it out there on the track?
Well, it's a little slippery.
We had a few spin-outs in the first few laps.
Yes, I think the guys were caught unawares, and my car wasn't handling like it was even yesterday in practice, so we're working on it, and I think we'll be right when we restart.
All right, well, everything seems to be, the fire's out from right now from what we can see. They're still trying to cool down the gas tanks. Let's go back up to Charlie.
All right, thank you, Bruce. The Michigan 500 has been stopped at this point in time due to the fire in the pits that started when Herm Johnson came into the pits, got loose from him, spread through 3 or 4 pits.
They have now brought in a regular large fire truck which has laid out hoses all the way through. There you see the white and red fire apparatus. Both of them are pumpers capable of delivering thousands of gallons per minute of water. They have a number of lines now laid out to the pit area. The fire is out, but what they are doing now is trying to cool these fuel tanks. They picked up tremendous heat during that fire, which probably spread 30 or 40 feet in either direction of Herm's pit. And now they have to try and cool those tanks down. You can see them just pouring water over the fuel tanks. Then they'll have to clean up the pit area. There is fire extinguisher powder all over the place as there is water, and then they will have to bring the field in and line them up. Here is the order that they will line them up in. Charlie?
The standings officially through lap 29, Tom Sneva, Rutherford, Mosley, Bobby Unser, and then Mears. Now, we will be back to cover this story. We'll stay right on top of it, and of course, the conclusion of the race. A week of hope in baseball. Let's go to Brian Gumbel in Dodge laps. The race has been stopped, red flag, due to a fire in the pits of Herm Johnson that then spread over 3 or 4 pits. Several crew members have been injured. We will have a report for you on that as soon as we get it. And this is what happened. This was about 5 or 7 minutes ago. And remember that this fuel, once it catches fire, you cannot see it. So it is very dangerous from that standpoint. You simply cannot see this fuel when it is burning.
That's the thing that everybody worries about on an alcohol fire. It's not visible. It can be very dangerous because it's not. These crewmen run back and forth while they're on fire. Could possibly set fire to something else.
All right, now let's go down to Gary Gerald. Gary?
Obviously very hectic down here at the infield track hospital. At the track hospital, a tremendous amount of activity. Mike Knight has been checking on injuries. Mike, can you give us an update here in the early minutes?
Yes, driver Herm Johnson has minor facial burns. He's being treated in the track hospital right now. One of his crew members, Greg Nelson, is being treated for 1st and 2nd degree burns of the feet. A member of the Penske pit crew has been in with a lacerated leg. He's been released. Steve Edwards, the director of safety, received some burns to his feet. He's being treated right now. There are a few more people who are going to be brought in, but they are all injuries of a minor nature, minor burns, and people who are going to receive some oxygen.
Okay, Michael, thank you very much. We appreciate the cooperation on this, and we would update the fact that 3 support standby fire departments have responded after the call from the infield safety crew here. They were pouring 4,000 gallons a minute of water on the tanks in an effort to cool them. There was, we could see, a lot of devastation of pit equipment, but certainly this first report is very encouraging at this time. And Mike, as we're standing here, we're wondering, do you have any indication if this race will be restarted?
It will be. The technical crew of CART is already in the process of making the preparations to restart the race. As soon as the situation in the pits allows us to restart, we will.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go back upstairs.
All right, thank you, Gary, for that report. Now, it is at times like this, the first person you think of course, the wife. The wife of the driver, the wives of the crewmen. One of the best known is Betty Rutherford, the wife of Johnny Rutherford, and Paul Page had a chance to visit with Betty Rutherford.
Oh, brother, if you're on your own, dedicate your heart. Girl, if you're out there all alone, dedicate your heart.
Betty Rutherford is probably the best known of the racing wives. She helps JR as a timer, sometimes a business agent, and friend and sounding board. There have been moments of trial for this former nurse, like last fall at Phoenix, Arizona, where she had to wait and watch as her husband was cut from his battered and broken race car. In Fort Worth, Betty manages to keep a warm home despite their furious schedules. She tries not to think about the dark side of the sport.
I don't worry about things that haven't happened. And if you have to go in with a very positive attitude, I don't think you could survive if you were constant worried. I think it would be impossible. I just don't think it would ever work. You couldn't live with yourself, and I know for a fact that would be true because when we were first married, there was there was a series of accidents, beginning with the Speedway and Davy McDonald crash, and then went to Milwaukee, and I believe Hurtubise was hurt, and then we went from there to Terre Haute, and Johnny White was hurt very badly, and I was going to the racetrack not thinking, you know, who was going to win. I was going to think who was going to be hurt, and it really got to be a pretty heavy thing, and we just decided we had to talk, and I said, you know, I've got to do something different, and one of the things was not to worry about things that hadn't happened, because usually they don't happen.
One of the things that does often happen is Johnny wins, and Betty's support and help is an important factor in each win. She hasn't missed a race in 15 years.
I hope I'm useful. I would hate to think that I wasn't.
Do you enjoy it?
And unless I've been gone for 2 weeks and it's all stacked up, then it's kind of a burden for a while. But most of the time, it's nice to know that you're needed, and it would kind of fall apart if you weren't there.
But Betty is always there. Racing is just as important to her as it is to Johnny.
I probably enjoy racing as much as he does. I enjoy the people in it, and probably when he retires, I will suffer as much as he does.
Girl, if you're out there all alone, dedicate your heart.
And the first thing that Johnny Rutherford said is that he had heard on his radio from the pits that Betty was all right. This as soon as he saw the smoke come up from the fire. Now let's go back to what happened. We had the fire in Herm Johnson's pit, and this is what it looked like. This is now 10, 12, 15 minutes ago when the fire broke loose, and then it spread up and down. It got behind pit wall. That's where the tanks are, the fuel tanks are. We heard an explosion. We thought it was a fuel tank. We believe now that it was tires that were exploding. And because of the heat, the tanks that were caught into the heat itself expanded, and we can show you that. You can see on the left the tank that is expanded, and on the right the tank that is the normal tank. I'm a little ahead of you. There it is. There it is. Now you can see the difference in the tank.
Herm Johnson's tank on the left has literally just bulged in the front end. And on the right is the normal tank of Bobby Unser's crew, though there is a concern here, Charlie. Bobby Unser's tank was only about 20 feet away. There, again, is the replay of fighting the fire. And as I watched the replay for a third time, I noticed what appeared to me to explode was the hose that connects the tank to the race car. Fortunately, again, there's a shutoff valve before the tank so that the fire couldn't actually get up into the tank. But look at this tremendous firefighting effort. This has been something that everyone has worried about in IndyCar racing for so long. Rick Mears had his fire at Indianapolis. It was contained. People complained about the time. And look at this tank. You can see the hose is gone. So, Charlie, I think that's what blew off.
So we are under the red flag here. The race has been stopped. 29 laps have been completed. Michigan 500, a total of 250 laps. The race, the official word from the CART officials is that the race will be restarted. But, of course, first we've got to clear out the pits. We've got to get everything as back to possible as it was. Michigan 500 under the red flag will stay on top of the story. The standings. Tom Sneva leading at this point. We'll be back in a moment.
It's burning fiercely. Now watch at the front of the tank. The hose is on fire. And then suddenly the hose burns through, and it was the explosion that we heard. There it happens, and look at it spray, and it is spraying fuel and fire down into the pits. Now directly behind that point there is a cutoff valve. Apparently it worked because the fire did not appear to blossom after that. It continued burning in about the same status. Now, I was saying earlier at the Indianapolis 500, they were concerned about this. They were concerned about response. They got that fire out there before it got over the pit wall. This one went over the pit wall, and that even creates more concerns. Roger Rager, Dick Simon, and Bobby Unser all have pits that were closely adjacent and were partially involved. So what do those people do? Let's go down to Gary Gerold and find out.
Well, Bobby Unser is standing by here now as they begin this massive cleanup operation in the pits. And Bobby, everyone is almost at a loss for words. And I think your first comment was this has really been a tough year for racing.
Well, what I meant was the tough year for fires in racing. I can't give you answers for it all happening. I can't give you reasons for Indianapolis happening like it did. We're really safer than we've ever been for fire. It's just we're in an era of having fire problems, and thank God nobody's getting hurt too bad, but it's beyond my words to explain it. I couldn't even give you a good explanation for this. I mean, it's the second time for poor Herm Johnson. He had a problem at Milwaukee, and then another problem today, and lo and behold, at Milwaukee, he was just almost next door to our pit.
Right.
And then again here, he was right next door to us, and I just don't know. It shouldn't happen. We shouldn't have these fires. We're plenty safe. But I guess we are having them.
At this point now, they've said that you're going to be restarting this race. It's got to be awful tough, I think, to get your mind back to racing, which is going to be coming up here in the next who knows how many minutes.
No problems there. The drivers that run this race are pros. That won't bother them. The things that bother is like my pit was right next to his, and I got a lot of things that are burned.
Okay.
And I'm going to be short some items.
Right.
But we'll borrow some and makeshift, and now it looks like we'll get by all right. But for a while, it looked like it was really desperate, like we were possibly even going to have to pull out of the race because lack of things to run with, like tires, like wheels.
Appreciate your comments, Bobby. We'll let you get back to the crew. Right now, we're going to switch to Bruce Jenner. Gary, just a few minutes ago, this pit was ready to service a race car, and right now it's completely destroyed. And with me is John Menard. Now, John, you were on the right front tire when it went up.
That's right.
Do you know exactly what happened?
Well, I just stopped the car. I looked up. They were fueling the car. I started back around to check the left front tire. I saw Greg pull the hose back out of the car that fills the car. The thing that automatically closes the fuel valve stuck, and the fuel started going all over. I knew it was going to happen, and I started for the water pail that's in the pit. And by the time I got to the water pail, it was burning already. I started back over the wall and threw it at the driver and at Greg. And by that time, the fire extinguisher started going off. And it was just...
Do you know the conditions in any other pit crews?
As far as I know, our crew chief, Dan Coda's got a slight burn on one hand. Greg, the fellow that was doing the fueling's feet are fairly badly burned. And our driver, Herm, has got facial burns. And one other fellow's got the hair burned off his hand, but not seriously.
But nobody's seriously injured?
Nobody's really seriously injured. Greg has the most serious injuries on his feet. They were spraying the fire foam on his chest and head, thinking that was on fire, and his feet was burning. And it was just unfortunate that nobody got to him right away. Otherwise, I think he would have been not.
It's the second time for you guys. That makes it difficult.
Second time, and we really didn't need that.
Getting a little gun shy.
Yes, sir.
I don't blame you. All right, let's go back up to Charlie.
All right, thank you, Bruce. It was just not quite an hour ago that the race started. And one of NBC summer season innovations is an onboard camera in Bill Alsop's race car, in car number 7. He was in the inside of the 3rd row, and this is what the start looked like from a driver's view.
The green flag already beginning to fly now as he accelerates. You can see how fast the front row pulled away. That yellow car is Johnny Rutherford, and Sneva is right down in front of him. Directly in front is Pancho Carter. And he pulled the low line, allowing some of the traffic up high going into the first turn. I'm absolutely amazed at these pictures. Remember, the camera is just about 4 inches off the ground, right down in the nose. Now here comes Mike Mosley by. Look what a tremendous job of driving he did. And look, too, how close they are. Mosley kicking up some dusties down so low. Alsop decides to drop in behind him.
What kind of speeds were they doing early in the race here, Paul?
Well, they were probably picking up to about 195 miles an hour at this point, because they're really coming up to full speed as they come across the line now. Tremendous little camera, just an incredible job. The total package weighs only 10.5 pounds. The camera itself is only 1.5 pounds. And Arnie Reef and Bob McKieran and our technical people, Fred Hamelfarb, Chuck Reisner, Tony Dia, Bob Decker, Phil DeFeo, have worked constantly for several weeks on just the pictures you're looking at, and they have done a fine job.
Also qualified, to give you an idea, at 197 miles. Under the red flag here, we will be back, of course, to keep this story covered, and we will also be back for the start of the race when it's restarted. Today, one of the feature dates. The English problems in turn 2, as Johnny Rutherford told us earlier in an interview. It is simply slick there. And then Pancho Carter lost it spinning low when he saw Dixon out in front of him. Now this brought out the yellow flag. So under the yellow, then Herm Johnson, amongst others, headed for the pits. And that set up what was to be the one thing that would involve everybody here over the next half an hour. That was the fire that started in Herm Johnson's pit.
Well, the fire spread very, very rapidly. The refueling holes did not shut off when they disconnected it from the car. It sprayed fuel. Then we saw what you just saw, the tank hose let go, and a tremendous fire in the pits.
That was the sequence of events. Now, you will recall at the Indianapolis 500, Rick Mears was involved in a fire in his pit, and he's with Bruce Jenner. Bruce?
Charlie, he certainly was. And Rick, what goes through the minds of those guys when all of a sudden all they feel is that tremendous amount of heat?
Well, it's really hard to say. You know, when I had mine in Indianapolis, I was more or less in a panic. I didn't know what to do. When that starts burning like that, you're just at a loss. You don't know what to do next, where to go, or who to turn to. And
I was just a few pits away, and let me tell you, I was scared. All of a sudden, you didn't know what was going to happen, and you could see you could just see heat waves. You couldn't see flames.
Yeah, it's a scary feeling. There's just not a whole lot you can do.
A couple of the guys were just injured. Doesn't seem like too bad at this point. Your injuries seem to be okay. You seem to be getting right back out there.
It's getting better. It's getting better. We still got a little more work to do on the nose, but it's coming around. It'll be all right by next year.
All right, let's go to Gary Gerald. He's with Roger Penske.
Thank you, Bruce. Roger Penske overseeing the cleanup operation here in his pit. Roger, are you going to have to move your pit area?
Well, I don't think so. Fortunately, we didn't have any fire here. The fire people jumped in and kept our area from burning. We had some of our rubber hoses burned. We're going to change the fuel hose that goes into the car because it got the white powder on it. But all in all, we're in good shape, and we're just glad that nobody got hurt any worse than they did, and I appreciate all the help everybody's given us.
Any indication at this point of how far we are away from the restart of this race?
Oh, we should be able to start pretty quick. They're just cleaning up the pit lane here, and we're getting set. I think we'll go very shortly.
Okay, Roger Penske overseeing the cleanup operation in the Bobby Unser pit right now. It's a massive effort down here, a tremendous amount of cooperation on all counts, a big job, and as Roger said, we're fortunate, I believe, that not more people were more seriously injured.
All right, thank you, Gary. We are under the red flag here. Out of the race, Whittington is out, Johncock is out. However, we do have a report that because of the red flag that they are taking the Johncock car in, they're going to work on it, they're going to try and get it back out. Engelhardt is out with an accident, Herm Johnson is out with the fire. We, of course, will be updating this story throughout the afternoon. We will stay here for the race, the Michigan 500, when it is restarted. The weather is still holding, so it looks like we've got a clear day, at least as far as the skies are concerned. All we have to do is clean up the situation in the pits. 6 courageous women have ventured to the Sierra Nevadas to test both themselves and the rugged landscape of Strawberry Peak and the climb and rappel. First of 4 events in the race is still halted. However, the report is that we will have the restart of the race very soon. Of course, it has been stopped due to the fire in Herm Johnson's pit. This is a refueler's mask. and so you can see the damage that was done. And you can also see the fact that he had that protection, and that is because of the fires that we have been having this year. All right, we'll be back for the start here of the Michigan 500 when they're ready, but right now, let's go back to Mike Adamle and Donna DeVerona for the women's survival of the fittest. 500 still under the red flag. We understand that the race will be restarted with 32 cars in about 15 minutes. We have 29 laps complete, a near tragedy with the fire, and fortunately, nobody has been seriously hurt. A great show tomorrow on NBC Sports World. The Glamour Bar of American middleweight. Bobby Ches taking on Rick Noggle live in a scheduled 10-round bout. The women's will be challenging the raging rapids of the Stanislaus River in the survival of the fittest. This is the week of the wedding. Prince Charles and Lady Di. Well, tomorrow we will have same-day coverage as Prince Charles takes the field in a key international polo match just a few days before the wedding. And the report that we have, Nancy Reagan will be there to watch it, and Lady Di is not that thrilled about the Prince playing polo. So for that situation, that will be live tomorrow for the refilling of the fire bottles. So let's take a look now. As you can see the standings as they are changing, we understand that 32 cars out of the original 37 will be restarting here, and we have been red flagged after a total of 29 laps, and that, of course, as you know by now, is due to the fire that we had here. That fortunately no one was seriously injured, and we will be updating those reports on you. Now let's go back to the start of the race. Mike Mosley, who started in the 12th position, that's outside in row 4, really charged in the first part of the race, Paul.
Well, Mosley's stock block engine should pay off in torque, the ability to accelerate. Here is Mosley starting in 12th position. And as you can see, the torque working very well as he moves around Bill Alsop's car and really begins to fly. And he was able to move up in this first lap substantially. Look at the traffic and watch the fine job of driving that Mosley does as he darts down to the inside and is looking for just the right hole right behind Pancho Carter there. He falls in. A.J. Foyt is sitting up there. And it's just a tremendous job as he keeps that car very low, picks up another couple of positions, and drops in behind A.J. Foyt. So Mosley, who is exceedingly good in traffic, and there you see it in the first lap of the race. He started 12th, and in the first lap was able to pick up at least 4 positions.
Mike Mosley at age 34, a total of 5 championship car wins, including one this year at Milwaukee in car number 48, and this is his 15th year of driving championship cars, so that means that he started at age 19. So he joins that category of Pauls of the Young Titans. Now, we are still, of course, under the red flag here, the fire that we had earlier, and that was in the pit of Herm Johnson. And who needs baseball? Right now, we could use it, but this is the fire. And you have an update on an injury report, Paul.
Well, it certainly had a potential of being disaster. You saw there the fire hose, the fuel hose completely blow off the front. Here is the report of injuries. Herm Johnson, the driver, suffered minor burns, treated and released from the first aid station here. Greg Nelson, the crew member, first and second degree burns of the feet, was taken to the University of Michigan Burn Center in Ann Arbor, just about 25 miles from here. Jay Signori, a crew member on the Penske team, and one of his executives, was cut on the left leg and taken to Foote East Hospital in Jackson for treatment. Then Steve Edwards, who is the director of safety for CART, suffered some burns of the feet. He was treated and released from the first aid station here at the track. Dan Cotta, Johnson's crew chief, burned on the right hand, treated and released at the first aid station here at the track. And Nick Sargent, Orville Huff, and Dale Wampler, all MIS firemen, were treated and then released for inhalation of smoke and vapors.
And of course, what you saw with the fire, that was a replay. It has been brought under control. A few days ago, we had a chance to see exactly how the safety crew works. The reaction starts when the accident happens.
Yellow, yellow, yellow. Car against the outside rail in turn 3. Yellow, yellow, yellow. We have a car in the wall in turn 3. Car 1 is in the wall. There is definite contact. Car 2, there is definite contact.
At no time in championship racing are seconds more precious than when a serious crash occurs. In this simulation for our Sports World cameras, we've just seen how quickly the elaborate firefighting gear stationed around the track can snuff out the dreaded threat of fire. But stifling the flames is just the first step of the rescue process. Efforts must then be made to stabilize the driver, then begin the process of extrication. If the situation demands, the Hurst Jaws of Life, augmented by special cutting tools, is pressed into operation. In this demonstration, we can see how effectively Cart Safety Director Steve Edwards is able to cut through steel posts. At the same time, a jammed door is being forced open by the sophisticated extrication equipment. Should the need arise, each of the two Cart Safety vehicles is equipped with water gel fire blankets that can be used to wrap a burn victim. The sterile blankets provide a cooling effect for the victim as he awaits transportation to a burn center. Aiding Edwards is Medical Director Dr. Steve Olving, who tends to the driver's need while Edwards supervises the extrication. A medical doctor rides with the fire crews and rescuers in each of the Cart emergency vehicles. Both doctors have extensive medical equipment at hand, including cardiac monitor and defibrillator, IVs, resuscitation equipment, and specially designed backboards to fit Indy cars. They are, in effect, a totally self-sustained emergency unit, the type of unit necessary for this style of racing, but a unit all hope will not be needed in the course of today's event.
And Steve Edwards, the principal character in that dramatization, the fellow in the orange suit, is the director of safety for Cart, and he was one of those that suffered some injury, some burns on the feet in the pit fire. You can see this should be a treatment of Edwards here in replay, where they are found out apparently somewhat belatedly because the alcohol fire doesn't become visible. Then apparently they were able to get it out just by dumping water on it. Gary Gerald at this moment is with Steve Edwards. Gary?
Paul, it's somewhat ironic that we do a feature piece prior to this race. Steve Edwards kind enough to show us the various skills in that tremendous blaze of approximately an hour ago. He was in the middle of the firefighting operation, as you indicated, a slight burn. Steve, we're pleased to see you here, but I know you're trying to get geared back up to go out in racing, and that seems to be foremost in your mind right now.
That's the number one thing. They tried to keep me in the hospital, but I told them no way, so I bolted for the door, and here I am.
It takes a tremendous amount of dedication. I don't know if can you put it in words what it takes to be in the middle of a potentially dangerous situation as what we saw earlier this afternoon?
You just got to love racing, and these competitors are my friends, and I want to do what I can for them, and that's really the bottom line.
Well, you've said it very beautifully. We're glad to see that you're all right, and I know there's a lot of work yet to be done. Keep up the good work.
Well, thank you, and I just like my family to know I am okay, so don't worry.
All right, that's Steve Edwards, the Director of Safety for Championship Auto Racing Teams. He's back into action. Let's go back to Charlie Jones and Paul Page.
All right, thank you, Gary, for that update. We'll be back with the restart of the race in just a few minutes, but right now an exclusive interview with one of the most successful movie stars turned racing driver, Paul Newman. My colleague Paul Page caught up with him 2 weeks ago at Watkins Glen.
World last saw Paul Newman in September at Road Atlanta, where he raced his Datsun to second place in the SCCA Road Racing Championship. And now we're with him again at Watkins Glen, a tiny town nestled in the Finger Lakes region of upstate New York. Auto racing takes all kinds of forms, and so does Paul Newman's participation in it. Today, he is here not as a driver, but an owner, watching his drivers, Al Unser and Teo Fabi, compete in the 1981 Can-Am Challenge.
Paul, can we get this team this year, Al Unser, Teo, is it doing what you want to do in Can-Am racing?
You betcha.
What are your ultimate goals? What would you like Paul Newman to have done in racing when it's all over?
I don't know that I've thought that far ahead. I mean, racing is something, at least that I do year by year. I don't know about Al. He's a young whippersnapper, but us older guys, you know, it's day by day.
Newman started racing at age 47 after starring in the movie Winning. He won 2 National Sports Car Club of America championships and finished second in the 1979 24 Hours of Le Mans. Now, at 56, Newman continues to race Datsuns in both amateur and professional divisions. This is his 4th year as a Can-Am owner as well, and his 1st year with 3-time Indy winner Al Unser as one of his team drivers.
He's really a great guy because
I don't look at him as in the status that he is what he is. I look at him as a car owner that is very much interested in putting together a fantastic team, and he wants to win. And it's not a pastime. It's not something that he just says, oh yeah, well, they do that on the weekend. He comes and actually wants to know what is going on and why this isn't done or that isn't done. So I love it. I think every car owner should participate as strong as he is. So far, I can't say enough about him, and that's not because he is who he is. I could care less about that. As an individual is what I'm talking about.
Well, I think it's a very fast racing driver, and because he knows very well the car, it's very easy to work for him, because when you're talking about the car with him, it's, he knows what you're talking about.
Well, I started racing very late, and I knew it was late, and I thought, well, there will come a point where I'll get older and slower. And I thought that would have been about 4 years ago. And to kind of protect myself, because I really did want to stay in racing, I wanted to have a team, and I like Can-Am racing. I think it's, I think the cars are exotic. I like road racing rather than any other kind. And I don't know. I'm not getting older and slower, so I'm still racing, and it's difficult because I do a lot of flying, I'll tell you, back and forth between mine and Can-Am racing. It's difficult.
You're quoted as not having come to the Can-Am because these cars are over your head. Is that quote accurate? Do you really feel that way?
Yeah, that's accurate. I'd just be out there looking for an accident.
The driver has injured his leg. He is out of the car. There is no fire.
The Canadian-American Challenge, the Can-Am, once featured the most powerful road racing cars in the world. Political infighting destroyed the Can-Am in 1974, but the series was resurrected in 1977. The cars are prototype sports cars, much like Indy cars, but with fenders and top speeds of 190 miles an hour. With the participation of interested sponsors and owners like Paul Newman, it is becoming the top form of American road racing again.
I wish there was 100 people like him involved in racing ball, and I mean this because he's a good car owner. He puts a lot of effort towards the team, and when you have a car owner like that, it means nothing but 100%.
It's very important to have Paul Newman on the team because he's a very famous person, so I think for him it's more easy to get the sponsor.
When you looked at it at first and thought this would be fun, has it been as much fun as you thought it'd be?
More. Oh yeah, it's a real kick in the rear.
The results of the 1981 Can-Am Challenge at Watkins Glen were not favorable to Paul Newman's team. Both Al Unser and Teo Fabi had car trouble, so Newman's team did not win. We're still awaiting the restart at Michigan 500. We'll be back. We are waiting the restart as we are still under the red flag. But right now, arbitration, strikes, seven-figure contracts, there's no doubt that sports is big business. So let's go to Bryant Gumbel in Los Angeles for a look at the dollars and cents of the national pastime.
This past summer, many of us have dealt with the words compensation and free agency. What are they all about? What do they mean?
8 minutes to the restart. Now, what we have seen in the pits thus far today, in reality, has been pandemonium, but it's not that way normally. This is where you see the crews at work, and it is programmed. Gary Gerould has a report on a pit stop.
It may be a well-worn racing cliche, but without a doubt, races are won and lost in the pits. During the course of today's Michigan 500, this scene will be repeated more than a half dozen times by the hard-working crews serving each of the drivers. A precisely choreographed piece of business that occurs when 5 men come over the wall to change tires and add upwards of 40 gallons of fuel in a matter of seconds. This is the Rick Mears pit crew in action, the same crew that was ravaged by fire this year at Indianapolis. This special demonstration for our Sports World cameras reunited the Mears team for the first time since that horrifying experience at Indy. Let's look at the specific functions of each crew member as Mears' Gould charge is serviced. First, airjacker Chuck Sprague connects an air hose that instantly elevates the car on 4 jacks. At the same time, John Haupt wields an impact wrench to remove and replace the right rear wheel. As the car comes down off the jacks, both men race to the rear to help push Mears away. At the right front location, Chief Mechanic Peter Parrott handles another high-speed wheel gun to change the right front tire. As he pirouettes away from the wheel back to the wall, Parrott must be absolutely certain the hose is clear of the car. Meanwhile, Mark Wisniewski and Bill Murphy work in tandem to fuel the car. Wisniewski vents the top of the fuel tank as Murphy couples the fuel hose to the side of the tank. When fuel appears in the vent hose, both men simultaneously pull their hoses and jump back. In a matter of seconds, the team concept of championship racing is put to the supreme test in a well-orchestrated series of maneuvers that sends Rick Mears back on the track.
We have been under the red flag now for about an hour and 25 minutes. Early on the red flag caused by the fire in the pits, an interview with Johnny Rutherford, Paul Page, he said that he felt there ought to be an inquiry. From your experience, what can they do to increase the safety, the problem of the fires?
Well, Charlie, one point to be made. We certainly have now been warned. 3rd time this year, a fire in the pits, this one the most serious of the 3. They have all involved injury. Johnny Rutherford offered earlier in the year that one thing that could be done is some sort of additive put in the methanol alcohol fuel so that the fire could be seen, so that you knew where it was burning, and to help the firefighters fight it. There have been constant arguments about what to do with these fuel tanks. There's about 280 gallons of fuel available for a race per tank. They are in really just steel containers that are sitting up on pipes. And how would you fight a fire in that situation? Interestingly enough, Johnny Rutherford's own crew did some extra purchasing and now have little bottles of special chemical that if a fire would start in the pits, they can turn them on, and hopefully it would help suppress it. Anything that they do to help suppress fire in the pits is going to be expensive, and that's the problem they're faced with. I'm wondering if maybe one of the first solution is to make the fuel tanks in the pits have the same criteria as the fuel tank in the race car. That is a completely crash-worthy sealed system. But that's only one possibility. I do think Johnny Rutherford is correct. Let's take a look at it. We've had 3 warnings. Let's find out what we can do to correct it.
All right, now let's go back to the restart that we will be having here in a few moments. When they restart, it will be as they were stopped, because they were stopped on the track. They were stopped under the red, so they were stopped immediately. So you will see coming out behind the pace car Tony Bittenhauser, Bob Lazier, and Salt Walter. They are not amongst the leaders. These will be the leaders. In the 4th car will be Tom Sneva, followed by Johnny Rutherford, Mike Mosley, Bobby Unser, Vern Chupan.
Now, the cars have really set their position in the race now, so when we come to a restart single file, these cars will probably maintain their relative positions as they run down through the field. There is some mild confusion because of the confusion around the red flag. There was so much fire extinguisher smoke in the air and everything that perhaps some of the scorers were not able to see the exact positions. And so part of the problem is to try and reestablish the field exactly as it was. One thing that has been said without question is when they come around the first time, the first of those yellow flag laps, they will start counting with lap number 30.
Now that is lap 30 of a 250 lap race, so still a lot left to go.
Bobby Unser has to be thinking about a number of very important items. Remember, his pit is directly adjacent to Herm Johnson's, the one where the fire was centered. Now, some of his equipment got very, very hot. They took his tires and his wheels back to the garage area to have them as fully inspected, but nobody is entirely sure when something like that happens what the effect of heat on some of this equipment is. So they have done the best they can in inspection, but I guess there is always going to be a question until they can actually examine it with special testing equipment, how safe all of that equipment is. It is as safe as they can make it at the time, but there is a question mark there.
All right, is there another driver besides Bobby Unser that is facing that same problem?
Well, certainly Dick Simon has to be looking at the same situation. He was on the other side of the Unser pits at the time, and they looked at his wheels and tires as well. You also don't know, we heard them say in the Bobby Unser pits that their hoses were damaged and they had to replace them. So there's a lot of things that have to be answered there. Let's go down to Gary Gerould, who's with Mike Mosley.
Paul, we're right down here alongside the Pepsi Challenger and Mike Mosley, who has just now buckled back in. Mike, any problems at all with this long delay in your mind in getting back now into the real racer syndrome?
No, I don't think I'll have much problem, no.
Obviously, you have made great strides in this past week. You qualified at 1 speed. The next day, you gained a couple of miles per hour in practice. You gained more in yesterday's practice session. What has happened with this team to see this dramatic gain in speed?
Well, as you probably know, this car is basically pretty new, and we keep learning every time we run it. And we try to make a lot of changes, and the car has come good for us.
It's got to be a tremendously exhilarating feeling for you to know that you're making that progress, and up until the red flag, challenging for a lead.
Most definitely. It's nice to be competitive.
All right, Mike Mosley, he's set. He's ready to go down here in car number 48. Let's go to Bruce Jenner. Right now I'm with Tom Sneva. And Tom, they put you back a few places, although you were leading at the time.
Well, I'm not sure. There's some confusion on the scoring. Some of these guys feel they should either be able to pack up behind us or whatever, but you know, this is part of the deal. It's still early, and we've got a long ways to go.
Certainly do, and your car is running very well.
We're happy with it. If it'll just keep running like it has been, we'll be in good shape.
Okay, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Charlie?
All right, Bruce, something that you might notice, Mike Mosley and Tom Sneva both wearing glasses. Under the rules, you are not allowed to wear contact lens when you drive in a kart race.
Well, that's a pretty straightforward situation. If you would have something go wrong with your contact lens, a little particle of dirt or dust under it, or if it would blow off your eye, then you're in real trouble. So contact lenses have not been allowed in any form of racing.
And I'd like to mention, I mentioned this story before on Tom Sneva, but he says that when he goes to the driver's meeting, he's got an extra thick pair of glasses that he wears to the driver's meeting so he can worry the other drivers.
Kind of reinforce everybody's. Bobby Unser is in his machine and ready. It looks like they're getting very close to the start of this race. A restart, actually, after a very long red flag.
And something that we might watch for, they will run, as we have been told, then 4 laps under the yellow. Those laps will count. Several cars did not come in under the yellow before the red. They can then come in under this yellow of the 4 laps. They can pick up their fuel and tires if they need it and then go back out. So that'll be interesting to see who makes that particular move.
They have just changed the scoring lineup. They are now going to start the cars, they say, in order, which means that Tom Sneva will be at the head of the serial behind the pace car.
All right. So we are awaiting the restart of the Michigan 500, a total of 250 laps. We have 29 laps complete. We'll be back with more of the Michigan 500 in just a moment.
And there was a continuing fire at the fuel tank, and it burned for some time.
And we now have the restart of the race as the pace car is pulling out. After the IndyCar race is pulling out behind them, as we mentioned, Tony Bittenhausen, Bob Lazier, and Salt Waller, the first 3, then followed by the order of the race, and they will, as they come through turn 2, be dropping back and picking up their proper position. So the restart here, under the yellow, we will be running 4 laps under the yellow before the start, and the first lap as they come around, because on the red, they stopped immediately on the track, right where you were, and that will be, as they come through the first lap under the yellow, will be the 30th lap of this 250 lap race. This is a 2-mile oval here at Michigan International Speedway. The turns here are banked at 18 degrees. The back straight is almost flat. It has a 5-degree bank. The front straight, although it looks flat, in reality is not. It has a 12-degree bank along the front straight.
You can see them pull up on the bank right now. There is one other point. As you saw the cars pull out, Larry Dixon and Pancho Carter both were able to move back into the field. They were involved in spins, Dixon actually touching the wall that caused the yellow that started the red, but they are both back in the field.
Here's a correction. Rick Mears is currently 5th, so it is Tom Sneva, Johnny Rutherford, Mike Mosley, Bobby Unser, and Rick Mears. We are under the yellow now, but we have the restart underway at the Michigan 500. So we will be back with more racing in just a moment. course, under the yellow with about 2 1/4 laps to go before we'll have the green. 32 cars in the restart. Herm Johnson, Cliff Husel, Billy Engelhart, Gordon Johncock, and Bill Whittington, the 5 cars that are out of the race from the original field of 37.
Yellow flag is out. It will remain out. Your leader is Tom Sneva. Johnny Rutherford is right behind him. This is a very important series of laps for them under the yellow. They want to get a good look at the race course, especially in the first and second turns. The cause of Larry Dixon's spin was apparently an oiling down that was done by Phil Kaliva's car. They have put oil dry out on the track to try and dry it up. But until the race cars actually come over at its speed a bit, they're not going to know too much about it. So they really want to examine that turn. There's some oil dry all up and down the first turn, and the cars are running through it. Hopefully they'll blow a bit of it off before they come back to speed. But that is a concern for them.
Paul, what kind of a situation, something that we have a moment here before we do get the green flag, what do we have from a driver's standpoint, from a car standpoint, a 500-mile race against basically a track that is banked all the way around rather than a flat track like at Indianapolis?
Well, the greatest problem is potential fatigue. The centrifugal force is causing lateral G-loading. In other words, very simply, he's just being pushed to the right in the cockpit. He's being forced over by the centrifugal force. That's very fatiguing. They wear collars around their necks. They wear little straps connected from their helmet to their shoulders to try and keep their head upright. But with the helmet on there and the extra weight of the helmet and the G-loading that they're receiving, they're just being pushed over constantly, and that contributes to fatigue. So they're trying to relax as best they can.
A delay of close to an hour and 35 minutes will simply add to that fatigue factor, I would think, mental as well as physical.
Well, on the other hand, they did have this time to relax, so I don't know how much relaxation they got. This has certainly been some tense moments for them, and it's been a matter of great concern. Are their friends injured? What's happened? What will happen to me? So I don't think they got that much relaxation. It probably did, in fact, add to their fatigue.
We are still under the yellow at the Michigan 500. We now have officially 31 laps complete. 4 laps under the yellow before we'll have the green, as we mentioned.
Several of the cars have begun using a technique of serpentining back and forth. Jose Legarza was doing it just a moment ago. What they are concerned about there, though Tom Sneva and Johnny Rutherford don't seem too concerned about it, is to try and wear their tires back up to the operating temperature just above 210 degrees so they'll stick well when they come back to the start. You see several of the cars actually doing that. Now, car number 57, Cliff Husel, has brought his machine into the pits. Apparently something wrong on his car. They're looking in the engine compartment. They have a report that it is leaking oil, so they're taking a look at that.
The weather a lot different than it was a week ago where we had the postponement due to the rain. We started with a hazy, cloudy day and the sun was shining, although clouds have begun to move in on us right now. The forecast is that there would be rain, but it would be this evening. About 7 o'clock this evening was the official forecast that we had.
Still another couple of yellow laps will be run. The pace car is staying out. Again, they want to take a long look at the race course, and if Cliff Husel was oiling, then they want to look at it even further and make sure he didn't add anything to it. Pace car has begun to speed up, and Charlie, it looks like we're going back to green at lap 34.
It'll be Tom Sneva, Johnny Rutherford, Mike Mosley, Bobby Unser, Rick Mears, the top 5, then followed by Steve Krisiloff, Al Unser, Jose Legarza, Tom Bigelow, Gary Bettenhauser, Dick Simon.
And they begin to pick up the revs and speed now. The pace car is coming off, and Tom Sneva is leading them back to the green flag.
And the green flag is waving, and here comes Sneva, Rutherford, Mosley, Unser. So Sneva continues to run all over the race course. He can, at this point in time, do almost anything that he wants to as he holds the lead over Johnny Rutherford. Rutherford has opened the lead over Mosley in 3rd, and in 4th is Bobby Unser, and those 4 have separated themselves from the other race car.
Tom Sneva's got to be happy with that car. It's running so very well. He can literally drive it anywhere he wants.
Coming through 3 and headed for turn 4, and Mosley makes his move as he comes underneath.
Mosley closing on Johnny Rutherford. Right back up on the back end of Rutherford's machine. Mosley coming across the line down low. He's challenging Johnny Rutherford for 2nd place, and Mosley pushes his nose past. The So can he hold on to it all the way through the turn? He and Rutherford are equal and side by side through the second turn. Now Mosley forges his way ahead and moves into second place and begins now a challenge of the leader, Tom Sneva.
And so the outstanding driver so far has been Mike Mosley. He started back in the 12th position. He's back in second where he has been before. Tom Sneva leads, and now coming into turn 4, Mosley is underneath Sneva. He's got position on him as he heads down the front straight. It is Sneva and Mosley. Mosley challenging underneath Sneva. Sneva holds him off as they go into turn 1. And then a challenge to Rutherford by Bobby Unser.
So first and second place, both being hotly contested here. Here is Mike Mosley alongside Tom Sneva. You can see Bobby Unser challenging Johnny Rutherford. They're on the backstretch, and the tremendous power of Mike Mosley's stock block engine is paying off right now. Though Sneva now beginning to pull just a bit ahead, and he takes the turn ahead of Mike Mosley. So Sneva maintains the lead. He had the lead coming across the line, will be scored as the leader on the last lap. But Mosley is not giving up. He's continuing to battle.
So Mosley again challenges underneath. Unser challenges Rutherford underneath, but neither can take. So it is Sneva, Mosley, Rutherford, and Bobby Unser, the top 4.
Mike Mosley is operating so low on the race course. It's a good place to run on a high bank. If he can hold on to it tight, he can come off the corner a little bit better. There he's done it, but it seems that Tom Sneva's motor picks up revs at the end of the straightaway, and he forges ahead as he's doing now.
So again, Tom Sneva holds off the challenge of Mike Mosley. We have 37 laps complete. We're coming to lap number 38. And Mosley underneath Sneva, and he takes him out of turn 4. So it is Mosley in front of Sneva. Sneva again at the end of the front straight, going high with the extra power that Paul was talking about. He stays side by side as they go for turn 2, and Sneva has the lead again. Rutherford is running third. Bobby Unser is running fourth.
What a fine battle for first place as Mosley came off the line just a nose ahead of Sneva. Two fantastic racing drivers as they're battling around the 2 miles bank at Michigan International Speedway. Here's the battle for second place. Johnny Rutherford and Bobby Unser. Rutherford has been able to hold Unser back, but now Unser just screams past Rutherford. And the question is Rutherford slowing?
It is Sneva, Mosley, Unser, and Rutherford, the top 4. Again, they are separated from the other cars as they go through turn 1 and head for turn 2. But Sneva, as you said, has to be tremendously pleased with the way that machine is operating. A new car this year.
Going around this racetrack like it's on rails. It is not that old a car. It was built to George Bignotti's specification, there is a car coming in now into the pits. Car 45 is Harry McDonald. Apparently a flat tire. They'll change it rapidly. Talking again about Tom Sneva's car and their chief mechanic, George Bignotti, the winningest mechanic in all of IndyCar racing, told the March Company what he wanted out of the car. They built it for him, and they delivered it, and immediately it was a very, very fast machine. It's barely 3 months old, and look at it, leading this race, though Mike Mosley is certainly giving it a run for its money.
40 laps complete down the back straight side by side. It is Mosley on the inside. Sneva again with the extra acceleration at the end of the straight continues to hold the lead into the turns. Now they run into lap traffic. Sneva will go high. He has the door closed on him. Mosley comes underneath, uses the lap traffic, and he takes the lead. Mike Mosley takes the lead.
So Mike Mosley just splits up and goes around, and Tom Sneva has to drop in behind. I wonder if what Johnny Rutherford hasn't been thinking through all of this is, why should I run so hard so early? And maybe he's satisfied just to stay in close contact with the leaders.
And earlier we asked Mike Mosley if he exercised to prepare for this 500-mile race.
No, I haven't. No, we just try to make the car as comfortable as possible for me so that I don't get tired. As far as handling and so on, if you have to fight the car all day long, you're never going to survive. So you got to have a well-handling car to run all day, to run fast all day.
An important point, the comfort of the car. The seats are molded to the bodies of the drivers.
It's very hard to really be truly comfortable in one of these machines. Let's take a look at this battle for third. Johnny Rutherford is leading Bobby Unser once again. So apparently Rutherford decided maybe it's not so good an idea to let Bobby roll past me, and I'm going to get back into this competition.
Now they have dropped back as a pair about 300 yards behind Tom Sneva, who's now in second. Mike Mosley is the leader, and he's opened up a comfortable margin over Tom Sneva once that they got into lap traffic and he was able to move around.
Now a question of the dependability of we've been calling it stock block, which is really a misnomer. It's a push rod engine. Most of the components in it are really designed for racing, though the basic design of it is a stock block engine. And the question is, how dependable will it be? How long can it continue to do what it's doing now, which is leading this 500?
The strength of the stock block engine. The strength, we'll talk about that in just a moment as we continue with our coverage of the Michigan 500. We'll be back in just a moment.
We're back live at the Michigan 500, where Pancho Carter in car number 5 has begun to move back up through the field. Now, he was the 4th fastest qualifier, but then when one car oiled down the track, both he and Larry Dixon spun. Pancho was able to get the car restarted, moved up to 19th position immediately thereafter, but he has been flying on this racetrack. Moments ago, he unlapped himself from A.J. Foyt, who was running 8th at the time, and Pancho is trying to get back into the fight now.
And there's Pancho Carter. Now let's go back to the battle between Johnny Rutherford in 3rd and Bobby Unser in 4th, as Rutherford now holding that margin over Bobby Unser. Unser took over 3rd, and Rutherford took it right back just about a lap later. And Johnny has held on to the number 3 position as Mike Mosley continues to lead and Tom Sneva continues to run 2nd.
Mike Mosley's car has been running very well. We've talked a lot about its engine, but I think we also have to talk about this new Eagle chassis with the smaller rear wing. I think that chassis is adding to his ability to race here because he's driving the car anywhere he wants to, high or low on the banking. So the combination of engine, the car, and certainly Mike Mosley are paying off for Dan Gurney and his team here today.
But let's go back to the strength of that particular engine. The strength is power in the turns. Is that correct?
Well, it is on most racetracks. The fact that it has more torque, more ability to accelerate. But on a high bank like this, several of the drivers told me that they are only wavering about 200 RPMs between their fastest and their slowest engine speed.
And there is Jerry Carl. Carl, one of the Chargers, and we expect to see him move up throughout the afternoon.
Jerry Carl with his stock block machine is one of the cars that does not have the financial support that so many people do. And earlier we had an opportunity to analyze a rich team and a poor team.
A real story is developing back in 2nd place because Jerry Carl in the red and white number 38 in a machine powered by a standard American Chevrolet stock block engine is doing battle with the former world driving champion Mario Andretti in a highly sophisticated Cosworth power machine. Back at the Phoenix 150, that tremendous battle for 2nd place has just ended in an oily cloud of disappointment for Jerry Carl as his engine has let go. A richly deserved standing ovation from the fans here in Phoenix for Jerry Carl. A tremendous fight. He kept that stock block engine running. Gotta be a happy guy.
Auto racing is very expensive. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to operate a team for a year. And in these days of double-digit inflation, the problem of racing may be a rich team versus a small team. The question is, how can the small team compete? Take, for example, Jerry Carl versus Roger Penske. Roger Penske's race cars go to the racetrack in style in this large truck. Now, it doesn't just carry the cars. Inside, there is a complete machine shop, and it also serves as the base station for the race car's two-way radio communication. When the Penske racing team goes to a racetrack, they bring along a large entourage. There are 3 cars, 3 drivers. They have a backup car and a crew of over 30 mechanics. Along with that, they have enough spare parts to build up yet another race car should it be necessary. Jerry Carl's truck doesn't have the fresh new paint job or the bright glittering chrome that Roger Penske's does. And inside, there's not nearly the sophisticated equipment either. Jerry Carl, unlike Roger Penske's drivers, has to work on the race car himself. His full-time help consists of 2 extra people. He picks up some other fellows that come along on the weekend and help him race. He has 1 old race car and 1 backup motor.
Some people have the idea you got to have a couple $1 million to go IndyCar racing, and that's not true at all. You can do a real good job for a sponsor for somewhere in the area of $250,000 a year.
Jerry Carl's financial struggles would ease if he had sponsorship, but sponsors are noticeably absent from his car.
Carl has one cash sponsor, Tonko Trailers. They contribute about $50,000 to his racing effort. Carl's total budget for the year is approximately $250,000. His car cost about $35,000. One stock block engine about $20,000. This year, Carl has won $46,456 in prize money. But the Roger Penske Racing Team has three major sponsors, A.B. Dick, Gould, and Norton. Each contributes a minimum of $250,000 to $300,000 to Penske Racing. Lesser sponsors include Goodyear, Cam2, Craco, and Champion Spark Plugs. The total budget for Penske Racing this year is $2.3 million. Penske uses Cosworth engines, which cost $45,000 apiece, and this year has won $268,564.
It's kind of tough for us right now. We are short, and we're trying to put together our budget for next year. And of course, the way the economy is today, it's kind of hard to find the money that you need to switch either transform these cars to Cosworth engines or update to a later car and a Cosworth engine. You know, we almost won the race at Phoenix. We had a chance at it. We were running second with 18 laps to go and broke, and we were catching Tom Sneva, who was the eventual winner. And the people went crazy, and that's what the people want to see, competition. Roger Penske had the same sponsors and had brand new cars and the Cosworth engines, and yet we were able to outrun Mario Andretti for second place at Phoenix, and that's racing. When a guy has if a crew is good enough and an engine builder is good enough and a driver is good enough to be able to do that.
Of course, everyone who does drive has access to the big bucks it takes to race. Whether it's 3 mechanics or 30, a bright, shiny truck, or a faded old one, the beauty of this sport is that occasionally the poor man's team wins.
We are back live, and we are under the yellow. Salt Walter had a problem down the back straight.
There he is, Jerry Carl, who is right behind the pace car. All of the leaders came in as a result of the yellow flag that came out when Salt Walter blew his engine. There's apparently oil on the track. We have several other cars beginning to show light blue smoke at the back that indicate that they are leaking something too. There is a machine on the backstretch that Salt Walter, there he is when he blew his engine. He put his hand in the air right away to say that he was slowing, but when he did that, of course, a lot of oil came out, Charlie. Jerry Carl behind the pace car, moving slowly under the yellow flag.
We have officially 55 laps complete. This is a race of 250 laps, so we have 195 still to go. The Michigan 500, and that's Dick Simon's car. There's smoke coming out of there.
He had problems in his pit stop just a few moments ago. He was showing that billowing smoke then, and maybe it'll clean up when he gets back to acceleration.
Now let's go down to Gary Gerould.
We're alongside Salt Walter here in his pits. He just climbed out of the car very quickly, peeled off the long john, the flame-proof underwear. It's hot out there, huh, Salt?
Yeah, it's very hot. You got a 33 or 34 degree bank here, and it just pushes the driver. You got about a 3 G-force down in there. And we're in a double-layer uniform along with the fireproof underwear. It's darn hot out there.
Well, why are you here in the pits talking to us rather than out there in the racetrack?
I wish I knew. It looked like we'd moved up into 3rd or 4th place again, and the car just running beautifully. And just let an engine just let go, but as they say, that's racing. So we just have to learn to accept it.
I know you were running at Pocono a few weeks back. This is your second time in this car, one of the March cars. Have you been pleased with the way the car's responded to you?
This is not a March. This is the car that Tom missed the Indy 500 with, Tom Sneva. And Dad and I worked a deal, so I'm driving for George McNaughty, but we hope to purchase the car. They did a lot of work on it and changed it since Indy because it didn't make the show. But it's a Phoenix car with March suspension. And at Pocono, we're right on the track record, so we were capable of winning that. So I'm very pleased with the performance of the car and the crew. Everybody's been great. It's just, airplanes aren't supposed to crash, but they do. Race car engines break, too. What can you say?
All right, thank you very much. David Salt Walter, number 21, now out of the race.
All right, thank you, Gary. 56 laps officially completed. We are still under the yellow. We now have Rick Mears out in front. He is the current leader. Mike Mosley second, Johnny Rutherford third, Bobby Unser fourth, Steve Kristeloff fifth, as we had several pit stops immediately after the yellow flag came out.
And Tom Sneva, as a result of his stop, may have dropped back behind Steve Kristeloff, but we're anticipating a green flag now. The green flag out and flying, showing first to Jerry Carl, but now our leader is coming down toward the line, and as the green flag comes out, several cars, including Dick Simon, who we mentioned earlier, have begun to smoke on the track. It looks like Simon's engine's done for the day. There's Mike Mosley as he makes his bid to get back in front once again.
So Mike Mosley has been the story thus far in the early going of the Michigan 500. Mike, in his 15th year of driving championship cars, is a total of 5 wins, including the victory this year at Milwaukee, and he's 34 years of age.
Mike Mosley, a fine young champion with years and years of IndyCar experience behind him, and yet he has yet to win a 500-mile race. So he's out in front now in a design that has not proven to be that successful so far, the stock block engine, but maybe he can make it work today.
Rick Mears running second. Johnny Rutherford is running third.
Now we're getting a change in some of the lineup. What we're actually looking at is a battle for second place. The white car, the light car, is Al Unser, and he is leading Johnny Rutherford. Al currently being scored in second, Johnny Rutherford in third, and Al beginning to pull away just a little bit. You saw some puffs at the back of his car. I think that is smoke from the tires as the car was bottoming, going over some of the bumps on this 2-mile track.
Mike Mosley continues to lead as we look back in the back. That is Johnny Rutherford in car number 1, representative of the defending national champion. Mosley is driving a car of Dan Gurney's. Now, Gurney has fallen on hard times recently. It has been, 3 or 4 years since Gurney's car has really been that competitive.
Well, Mosley has tried, Dan Gurney, the whole operation has tried to get that engine working. Here's Scott Brayton down in the pits making what appears to be a less than routine stop. They're trying to get the car up on the jacks. Now they have done it, and they want to work on that left rear tire and apparently change it. Maybe there's something else wrong in its suspension.
And we will now update the standings. Mike Mosley leading, Johnny Rutherford running second. Bobby Unser is third, Al Unser is fourth, Rick Mears is fifth, followed by Steve Krisiloff. Tom Sneva is now running seventh. A.J. Foyt is currently in eighth. Garza is in ninth, and Alsop is running 10th. That is an update as we have it through 60 laps.
Boy, there we saw it again. Just a puff of blue smoke as a car went over that bump going into the third turn. They really bottom out going into that corner. Johnny Rutherford sitting in second place behind Mike Mosley. Mosley has a tremendous lead. In fact, not even showing in the picture right now. The battle's really sitting back in second place.
We'll put a clock on Mike Mosley and Johnny Rutherford to give you the seconds between them as they come by the start-finish line. They're now, Mosley is going through turn number 3 headed for 4, and Rutherford now goes into turn 3. So almost a 2-turn difference. So we'll pick up the interval.
Here comes Mike Mosley down to come across the line. Mike Mosley comes across, waiting for Johnny Rutherford to come through now. And Johnny Rutherford comes through 5.4 seconds behind Mosley.
So it is Mike Mosley continuing to lead, Rutherford running second, with Bobby Unser, Tom Sneva, and Al Unser in that order, the top 5. 62 laps complete of 250 laps. A 2-mile oval here at Michigan International Speedway. And in reality, it is banked throughout the racetrack. And we'll be back with more coverage with 65 laps complete. This is Mike Mosley. He is the leader. Johnny Rutherford is now running second. Tom Sneva has moved back to third. Bobby Unser is fourth, and Al Unser is running fifth.
What a terrific afternoon for Mike Mosley. He won the last race. Maybe Dan Gurney and the crew have finally found out what has plagued them for so long, as the machine just is running so well. He pulls down the backstretch into the corner, runs anywhere he wants to on the racetrack. Johnny Rutherford is doing everything he can to chase him. Let's see if, as he comes onto the main stretch now, we can get the interval between first place Mike Mosley and second place Johnny Rutherford. Mosley comes across the line. The clock is running. Before it was just a tick over 5 seconds. It is about the same right now. Johnny Rutherford hampered by traffic, 5.4 seconds behind Mike Mosley.
In reality, Rutherford has started to close because he dropped back moments ago, and he was at 7, almost 8 seconds behind Mosley.
Well, Rutherford now is still having to contend with some slower traffic.
Tom Sneva now running third. Sneva, the early leader, dominated the race before Mosley took over.
And for a few laps, Sneva had to do battle with Bobby Unser, but he's finally been able to disentangle himself from Unser and has moved cleanly into third place.
68 laps complete of 250 laps of the race.
Mike Mosley's car continues to operate smoothly. The field, for the most part, has really strung itself out. There are a couple of small battles going on well down in the back, and we'll try to get a couple of those for you. But up in the front, it's Mike Mosley, car number 48, who is trying to win this race, and at the moment doing a fine job. We have a car that has slowed, pulled off the course, car number 96. That's Dick Ferguson, who has pulled down off the course. Apparently something going wrong in his machine, and it doesn't look like he is intending in any way to put it back in the race, but we'll keep an eye on 96 Dick Ferguson for you.
But Mosley now leads Johnny Rutherford by almost the length of the back straight, which, to give you an idea, is the length of 11 football fields.
On this race course, speed is something so hard really to perceive. Mike Mosley is traveling every second well over the length of a football field. So the speed here, coming on the main straightaway, he will touch 200 miles an hour and sometimes be a mile or two an hour over it. Looking again to pick up some interval. Mosley's already across the line. There comes Johnny Rutherford. We'll pick up the interval for you in a few minutes.
The interval, we have been informed, was 6 seconds, so Mosley continues to edge away from Johnny Rutherford. 70 laps complete.
A tremendous battle developing now at 5th place as Al Unser and Steve Krisilov have been fighting back and forth. Unser is now pushed past Krisilov, is now lapping some slower traffic, and Krisilov has to string himself in. That's Al Unser out in front as he comes past the 57 car of Cliff Husel, and Vern Schupan is also in there, though they are being lapped at this moment.
Al Unser, at 42 years of age, has 36 wins to his credit. Krisilov driving car number 40. And that is Andretti's car.
It looks like Kevin Kogan has his problems. He's slowing on the racetrack. There is Kogan down low. Can't tell if he is under power or not, but this young man has been spectacular all year. He has quietly moved up to high place finish in almost all of the races he's been in. Here's Jerry Carl. He comes in, picking up fuel from his pit crew. They decide the tires are all good. His stock block engine roars. He gets a drink of some sort of fluid to refresh himself and throws the bottle back over the pit wall. It's a plastic bottle, so it won't break, and he's on his way.
Mike Mosley, the leader. Back to a final note on Kevin Kogan. He is a rookie, but he is the 5th leading money winner this year. 72 laps complete.
Mike Mosley still handily out in front. Second place is now Tom Sneva, who has managed to move up and put himself in position behind Mike Mosley, though he is well back from the leader. Looking at the interval now, and this should be an interval to Johnny Rutherford, who is in second, 7.6 seconds.
So on Rutherford, Mosley is picking up about a second every 2 laps as far as the interval is concerned.
We have a yellow flag
is out. Yellow is out.
Report is that we have a car slowed to a stop on the backstretch. Car number 73 has come to a stop. Car slowed on the backstretch. Apparently no problem. All of the crews are there with the machine. That's Kevin Kogan. Not car 73, but Kevin Kogan, who we saw slowing earlier, and he finally came to a rest, but he was in a precarious area. You can see him right on the edge of the racetrack, and so they had to turn the yellow flag on.
We are under the yellow with 74 laps complete. In the Michigan 500, Mosley leads. We'll be back in a moment. Car 31, that is Larry Dixon. He has stalled and has stepped out of his car. But we also, while we were away, had some more action in the pits.
Well, we had Harry McDonald starting to pull out, and then the left rear tire bounced off. You can see the tire bouncing through the air in this replay, and Al Unser darts over to miss it. Steve Krisilov really takes a jump almost into the pit wall, and then Bill Alsop comes through, and Bob Lazier hits the brakes hard. Then they both cut for their pits, and finally the tire rolls harmlessly over to the wall, but it was a tense situation for a moment.
And let's look at it again. You can see it was like the Artful Dodger as far as the drivers were concerned, just avoiding the tire that was going every which way.
So a tense situation in the pits. Larry Dixon's car has stalled. The reason for this yellow is as the result of Kevin Cogan slowing to a stop in a precarious area on the backstretch. A number of the safety crews now with Larry Dixon's machine at 2, of course, will have to be pushed out of the way.
Now let's go down to Bruce Jenner. Bruce?
Charlie, right now I'm with a very interested spectator and worker, the wife of Rick Mears, Dina Mears. And Dina, last week when you heard that the race was not going to go off because of rain, it was going to be held this Saturday, you had to be a little bit disappointed because today's your birthday.
Yes, I was. I was very disappointed.
Did you have plans back home?
Yes, we were going to take our children to the beach and ride our three-wheelers.
Yeah. I noticed that you've been working very hard. Rick's time seemed to be going up and down. He hasn't been too consistent.
I don't know what's the matter. At the first of the race, he was right up there with 188s, 187s, 189s, and now they go from 186 to 181. I don't know if he's having problems with pushing or what it is.
I was standing right next to you when just a few pits down, the fire broke out. It had to bring back some bad memories.
I'm really afraid of it. I don't think women should be in the pits. I don't know, maybe it's a reaction right now just from nerves, but it's too scary, and the fire happens too fast, and I don't think the women should even be in the pits.
I noticed that you moved your stand back.
Yeah, we're farther away from the gas tank, and that's where I want to be.
Well, I don't blame you. Well, it'd be a nice birthday present if Rick meets you in the winner circle once it's all over with.
I'd like that a lot. I hope he does win. I hope he's just laying back waiting for the finish, and then he moves in on everybody. He does that a lot.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Nice talking to you. Let's go back to Charlie.
All right, we're still under the yellow flag.
We have several cars out of the race. Of course, on the 5th lap, Don Winnington spun, had an accident. Then Gordon Johncock got involved in an accident himself. They were talking about repairing the car. They did not. Billy Engelhart went out on the 25th lap with transmission difficulties. And then Herm Johnson suffered that pit fire 2 laps later. On lap 27, the car was burned. It could not be re-entered into this race.
And Paul, let me give you an update on the weather, and it is not that good an update. We're receiving just a slight on and off drizzle, very light right now.
Well, rain was threatened in the early forecast, but we thought we had enough time to get 500 miles complete. With the red flag, that has elongated, obviously, the time of the running by over an hour and a half, and so that forecast of rain is much closer to us. And as you said, Charlie, there's a light drizzle. They cannot run in the rain. They could go yellow and run under yellow for a few laps with a light drizzle, hoping for it to clear, but they could not race in the rain.
This is Charlie Jones and Paul Page. We're back at the Michigan 500 along with Gary Gerould and Bruce Jenner, who has been very active in the pits thus far. We're still in the yellow, Paul.
Well, this yellow, of course, has changed the pit strategy once again. They would be coming back to green probably by the end of this lap. Larry Dixon, whose car stalled down at the end of the pit area, apparently had a fuel leak. They brought that around to his pit area, and they're now working on the car and in hopes of repairing it. So as they come to the green flag now, the pace car has begun to pick up its speed and pulls out ahead of Tony Bettenhausen, who leads at the moment.
So it is Tony Bettenhausen in first, Bobby Unser second, Rick Mears third, Johnny Rutherford fourth, and Tom Sneva fifth. This will be the 80th lap complete when they come by the start-finish line right below us. And we might make this note because of the weather situation. 126 laps makes it official. 1 lap over the halfway mark. Green flag is waving as Bettenhausen, Bobby Unser, Rick Mears, Johnny Rutherford, and Tom Sneva, the top 5 in that order.
And it's Bobby Unser to keep our eyes on, because Unser should move up rather rapidly. Tony Bettenhausen, a fine young driver, but young is the key word, and the equipment is not that Bobby Unser has under him, though Tony's been doing a fine job this year, keeping in the races, driving a clean race, driving safe races, and he's still leading as they come around. In turn 2, we have a report of a problem. Yellow flag is out again. Yellow flag is out. A.J. Foyt into the wall. A.J. Foyt.
Foyt in turn 2 went into the wall, then rode down the wall. Thus far, though, there has been no fire, but A.J. is not moving. A.J. is not getting out of the car.
Fuel leaking down across the track. The fire crews are there. The car is sitting firmly against the wall. The crews are at the machine. A.J. Foyt's number 14. The yellow flag is out again. And this will slow the race further. No movement indicated from A.J. Foyt's car. The crews on the scene will continue to watch. Pace car is back on the racetrack, and it will bring the fields around.
A.J. still sitting in the car.
Steve Edwards, who was instrumental in that last accident, is on the scene now, looking over the car.
The jaws of life.
That's what that signal indicates. They're going to want those jaws to try and pry the car out. You saw it in our demonstration earlier. Steve Edwards, they can use it either to pry the car apart, or they can use it to cut large pieces of metal. And it looks like that car is badly damaged on the right side. So they want to use the jaws to gently pry the car apart. They'll take their time. There's no reason for them to speed up at this point. They want to take it easy and make sure that they don't injure a driver any more than the injuries he might have sustained. In the old days, when they pick him up, Charlie, and just run with him, so often they would cause more injuries in the rescue than they did in the actual work.
Dick Simon's car, he may have blown an engine from San Juan Capistrano, so he has dropped low on the racetrack. We, of course, are under the yellow with the situation with A.J. Foyt, and you may have noticed that one of the men immediately went in and put his hand behind A.J.'s head. Go back to the demonstration that we showed you earlier. When they move a race driver, they always want to protect that head and keep the head way forward.
Well, that's the concern. It is a broken neck, a broken cervical spine, and you have to assume it. It's very seldom true, but you have to assume it. There's those jaws of life from the demonstration earlier. Now watch them just snip off the locking mechanism in this car from our demonstration and bring incredible pressure to the tips of those jaws. And now they've got the door wedged open, and here come the cutters in Steve Edwards' hands. This is a demonstration videotaped earlier this week. And he will come in and just snip off the lock, which is holding the door together. There it is, and they get out. An incredible piece of machinery. It is used not only in racing, of course, it's used by fire departments and rescue services across the country with great success. It saved a lot of lives.
And that, of course, is the machinery that they're using on A.J.'s car. Dick Simon has now come into the pits.
We're down here in A.J. Foyt's pit. The crew obviously very concerned. They're trying to monitor radio information. We passed car owner Jim Gilmore, who went by us on a golf cart. He said that their initial report was it was a serious crash. Now let's listen in on this conversation. Well, a difficult problem here for us to understand what those radio transmissions are saying. Crew, of course, just standing by waiting anxiously for any information that they can get. That's the situation at the moment here in the A.J. Foyt pit.
And also, they just used a backboard to slide in behind A.J. And that, of course, is what Paul was talking about. You assume the worst and you use every precaution possible, and that's to give support to the back, the neck, and to the head.
Well, there's plenty of help there. Steve Edwards in the orange safety suit up over the top of the car. With his back to us is Dr. Steve Alvey. He is the medical director of CART, and they have a philosophy that the doctor should always be the same at every race course. That way the competitors know who they're talking to, and they have a certain level of confidence in someone who constantly takes care of them. And that is who's with them now, Dr. Alvey.
This is the accident in turn 2. We're under the yellow with 83 laps complete. A.J. Foyt, who just 2-3 weeks ago joined CART to run particularly in this race. This is where he first made his impact against the fence. Was set to go last Sunday. We were postponed due to the rain delay, and A.J. did not have an opportunity. He arrived late yesterday, did not have an opportunity to practice.
Well, A.J. has been an absolute delight the entire time he has been here. He has spent plenty of time talking with folks, talking to the reporters that are here covering this event. I walked down to the end of the pits the other day and had a delightful conversation with him. He really has been enjoying what he's doing. He says he likes to race, and that's why he's here.
All right, we'll be back, of course, with more of the Michigan 500. Now placed him into the ambulance. They had a small problem, just took a bit of time to get him out of his car that impacted against the wall in turn 2. But he is in that ambulance and will be taken immediately to the field hospital here.
Well, he'll go to that hospital for initial evaluation. They'll make a decision in the ambulance whether or not they should even stop there. If there is any reason, then they'll go right on to the hospital. Let's go back and look just a moment ago. Here is the scene at the car. A lot of people there, plenty of help as they were removing Foyt from the car, badly damaged on the right-hand side, but rather rapidly they were able to pick him up, get him out of the car, very careful when they picked him up to make sure that they didn't cause any additional injury. And they brought A.J. Foyt out of the car, loaded him into the ambulance, and the ambulance now wending its way around the track, and then it'll make a decision based on the severity of injury, a situation that we know nothing about. We have no idea whether he is injured badly or not, but they are being very careful, and they will decide will they go to the track hospital or will they go on to another facility.
And of course, we also should point out that they do have a helicopter standing by in case that it is needed, or they can take him to the hospital in the ambulance. Either way.
Report that there's A.J. Foyt's car, so you can see how hard it hit that wall, ripped the entire right side off of the car. But it looks to me like the cockpit is in pretty good shape. It's flattened. Remember, these cars, Charlie, have deformable structure. That's a very important term. The idea is that when you hit something, that the parts will absorb the energy of the impact, and the parts will come off, and accidents will look like they're terrible because parts are flying everywhere. But in that action alone, the kinetic energy of the crash is being released and hopefully not being transferred to the driver.
The car of A.J. Foyt impacting on the right side into the fence in turn 2 and then going down the fence.
Yes, I got one.
As you can see, completely tearing out the right side. And now let's go down to Bruce Jenner. Bruce?
Right now I'm with Steve Edwards. And Steve, how's A.J. doing? I noticed his car, the whole right side of it's gone.
Yeah, he hit the ramp pretty hard on the right side, Bruce. He was pinned in the race car. We were able to extricate him. He was unconscious when we got to him. He was regaining consciousness when we put him in the ambulance. It'd be premature to state his condition right now, but he was regaining consciousness. He was talking. There appears to be some injury to his right arm, and you know, that's all I can really tell you right now. But we do have him out of the race car, and he is on his way to the hospital.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce.
All right, Charlie, that's what's happened right down here with A.J. He's not in too good a shape right now.
All right, Bruce, can you stay with Steve there just a minute?
Certainly.
Because he was burned earlier. How is he doing? Because he's been all over the place.
Well, I talked to him a second ago, and he seemed to be doing fine. He says it hurts a lot his right foot, but he's a busy man today.
Okay, thank you, Bruce.
So now A.J. Foyt on his way to the hospital, but Charlie, they have some situations out in that turn. Its car badly damaged, and when it did that, it didn't only damage the car, it damaged the barrier. This is an Armco steel barrier all the way around, and now they're sending equipment out to look at the places where Foyt hits. This puts me, though not nearly as severe an accident as that of Danny Ongais earlier this year at the Indianapolis 500. And while we have still a question mark about the full condition of A.J. Foyt, though it sounded like Steve Edwards, who is a trained and certified paramedic, was rather optimistic. He was unconscious at the impact, but his conscious level is coming back. He is now beginning to respond to them, so that's a good sign in itself. But Danny Ongais is recovering rather well from the reports we're receiving from his California hospital. And one interesting report, he apparently calls his race shop every day and gives them a few more instructions about what he wants to do on the race car. Last we heard, he was hoping to be back in a race car before the end of this year. We all certainly wish Danny Ongais well and hope to see him back in a car soon.
And I also feel that he's probably watching the coverage in California right now. And we tried to talk to him, but he has a list. And it's a very select list of the people that could call in and talk to him. And neither Paul Page nor Charlie Jones's name is on that list.
Well, I saw Danny in the Indianapolis hospital just 2 days after his crash out at Methodist Hospital there. And I was amazed at the time, the tremendous strength of that guy, because he had a badly broken leg, and yet he was already trying to get exercise going.
Now let's go down to Gary Gerould. Gary?
Well, we're outside the compound, Charlie, along the infield hospital. The emergency vehicle, as you can see, has just arrived at the back door. All, of course, unauthorized people kept outside of this area, so we're just viewing in as they bring the gurney rather gingerly down from the emergency vehicle, and they'll be taking AJ in for some preliminary observation. His crew has been anxiously standing by. A couple of them have now gone inside to be with their driver, and they were anxiously awaiting that update report from Bruce Jenner and Steve Edwards over on the far side of the track. So at this moment, we'll just stand by here and we'll wait until we can get some official word on the condition of A.J. Foyt.
This is A.J. Foyt in turn 2. This was when he had come to a stop. He hit the fence a little earlier in turn 2 and then just came sliding right down it.
Well, it looks like the car just darted up into the wall. Having not seen the start of the crash, we don't know what put it up into the wall, and then it slid for some distance. Let's go back out to the accident site and Bruce Jenner.
Right now we're at the car, and the car is completely destroyed in the back. But you notice, I'd have to say, you know, the way the car has been constructed has been fabulous. It took the shot. The whole side of the car is gone, but the cockpit, where he would be sitting, has not really been damaged at all. Just the whole side of the car has been ruined. So really, it looks like nothing from the inside of the cockpit has been hit that terribly. But boy, did he take a jolt when he hit the side of that wall. Charlie?
All right, thank you, Bruce. Of course, Bruce is way away from our normal coverage, and that's the reason that we're having a little bit of breakup on the RF mic. But just as important to get the on-the-scene report. And Bruce Jenner is there. All right.
Rear wheel and up into the fence. It looks like that, though, again, I say we didn't see it.
The official standings now with 90 laps complete. Johnny Rutherford is in first, followed by Bobby Unser in second. Tom Sneve is in third. Rick Mears in fourth, and Mike Mosley's in fifth. Do you have an update on that?
Well, we mentioned the weather, and yes, we're getting now some reports of drizzle out behind the grandstand here, and the crews have radioed their teams. Generally speaking, they're concerned that this race may not go a full distance, and so they've told their crews, under the possibility of rain, the crews are telling their drivers, stand on it when we go green.
When I go out and come in, it took us a while to develop the same language as it does with any new team or new operation, new situation. But to go out and come in and say, the car is doing this, he says, aha, you know, because he's been there.
Many times when John describes something to me, I know just what he's talking about because I've felt that myself. Sometimes I have to say, well, I'm not quite sure how that relates to what I did, because I didn't drive any oval races, really. I did drive on some ovals, but I never really competed on them. So that I sometimes have to, we have to exchange several times to get across how that affects the car on the oval. But other than that, I seem to be able to relate very well to what John tells me.
Hall knows what he's talking about because he was a leading driver on the Can-Am circuit in the late 60s. Those days of road racing are fond memories for Hall.
I stopped driving after the 1970 season, and for me, I guess driving was as much fun as anything. I really did enjoy driving, and to win a hard-fought race where it was close and you think you won it on skill, there's probably nothing more exciting, at least not to me. I really did enjoy a couple of races that I had in my career, but I'll have to say that winning in Indianapolis has got to be another real high point in my racing. Even though I'm not driving now, I do enjoy the design work, the building of the cars, the team management.
In the old days, Hall tested his own designs with great success. The first Hall wing cars were so good, they banned the cars.
I think the sanctioning bodies tend to see the more sophisticated teams outperforming the lesser teams, and they say, well, if we'll change the rules to stop the major teams from doing what they're doing, then we'll equalize the racing. But that's not what happens.
You can't truly equalize.
No, you can't. And what happens is every time you make a change, the more sophisticated teams can change quicker. They react better, and they make the changes so that they move away from the field rather than back to it. And then it takes the littler teams, the little guys, 2 or 3 years to catch up. And just as they catch up, a lot of the times the sanctioning body will change the rules again, and then they're left behind again. So I think that's a bad premise.
Don't put me
forms of racing, Jim Hall has been known for taking it to the limit. And now let's go down to Gary Gerould and see what the situation is with A.J. Foyt. Gary?
Charlie, we're standing outside the infield compound once again at the hospital. As you can see, the helicopter is warming up. Now, we do not have information that they're going to transport A.J. Foyt to a nearby hospital, but we have to draw that conclusion. We did talk just moments ago, as a very brief conversation with Jim Gilmore. He came out to tell members of the crew and the family that what was taking place. He just said, please tell everyone that A.J. is a tough old bird. He's going to be fine. He was smiling. We know he's conscious, so that's all we can report at this time as we stand by to see whether or not indeed they will be transporting A.J. Foyt from the infield medical facility.
All right, thank you, Gary, for that report. And this man has been as important. I think he's been the most important man in the history of IndyCar racing.
Well, he has certainly been a key figure in the sport. He leads in all of IndyCar-type wins in history. He is the man that almost everyone consults when they want to make a move, when they need some advice, when they want to know which way to go in this sport. And I'm talking not only drivers, but promoters, sponsors, everybody. One of the first calls is always to A.J. Foyt to find out exactly what Foyt has to say about a situation. And so Foyt has been key for years. He continues to be key in the continuing conversations of the future of all of IndyCar racing.
At age 46, this is A.J.'s 25th year of driving Indy cars, and as Paul mentioned, 67 wins, 4-time winner of Indianapolis, and 7 times he has been the national IndyCar driving champion.
Now the pace car begins to head for the pit area. We anticipate a green flag momentarily, and it will be Johnny Rutherford leading Bobby Unser down to the line. As this race resumes, the green flag is out, and they are racing once again at Michigan International Speedway. Johnny Rutherford across the line, then Bobby Unser, then Tom Sneva, and Rick Mears drops into 4th.
Rutherford going into turn 2. With Bobby Unser right behind him. And again, these two cars quickly separate themselves from the field. It is Rutherford and Unser. And this is a situation that we've seen throughout the afternoon with Tom Sneva. We've seen it with Mike Mosley. We've seen it with Rutherford, and now with Bobby Unser. The two lead cars separating themselves from the pack, and there's a scramble behind them, but they continue to open the margin.
Well, originally, they said that this should be a race of pacing, but the fact that we are getting much later in the day as a result of the extensive yellow flags and the red flag, I think everybody has decided, forget pacing, let's go as fast as we can. Tom Sneva slowing down on the racetrack. He just suddenly began to drop back. Tom Sneva was running in 5th place and dropped back, so something seriously wrong in Sneva's machine, but he begins to pick up a little bit of speed now. He's still not really up to his previous racing speed as Gary Bettenhausen pulls alongside and passes him. So Tom Sneva slowing on the race course, and that may be the end of what has been otherwise a beautiful day for him. Sneva definitely off the pace and probably going to bring the car in.
All right, so we'll keep a close eye on Tom Sneva to see if he comes into the pits, and then we'll try and pick up a quick report. As Johnny Rutherford continues to hold the lead on Bobby Unser, we have 97 laps complete of a 250-lap race.
Johnny Rutherford leading handily, though he's battling with Bobby Unser, and it's a tremendous battle. Let's go down to the pits and Gary Gerould.
Paul, we can see at this moment A.J. Foyt, the veteran race driver of so many years, is being brought out now by the emergency crews to be loaded onto the helicopter here at this medical facility, obviously to be transported for further treatment at another hospital. We have no further information concerning his condition at this time. We would like to repeat that Jim Gilmore, his car owner, came out and said, A.J. will be all right. He's conscious. He's a tough old bird. And at that point, that's all the information we have. We had the earlier report that it was an injury from medical director Steve Edwards on the scene to the right arm. The loading process continuing here now for the airlift evacuation of A.J. Foyt. The crash occurring over in turn number 2, as you saw, extensive damage to the Gilmore car number 14. And right now, trying to gingerly as possible lift the veteran driver off of the gurney on that flat board and into the helicopter, which very shortly will be leaving the Michigan International Speedway grounds. You can see it's an extensive operation. It's one of those situations that no one ever likes to see in racing. Certainly we send our best wishes along with the man who has contributed so very, very much to this great sport over so many years as he awaits further medical attention. We can see some movement there as A.J. trying to cooperate with the medical personnel who have been working so diligently over the past several minutes. That's an encouraging sign. And again, we go back to those words of Jim Gilmore, who said A.J. will be all right. So that's what we have to report at the moment. We'll stand by, and as soon as that helicopter gets in the air, we hope that we'll be able to update the information with a report from Dr. Olvey or one of the CART spokesmen that is here within the compound at this infield medical center.
All right, Gary, thank you for that report. And Paul, you and I know A.J. Foyt, and you know at this moment that he's telling everybody what to do and how to locate himself into the helicopter so they get going.
He may be a little bit feeble about his descriptions, but if he's conscious at all, he's helping out, and probably helping out with some drama, too. Now, this says one thing to me, and that is that the transport will be not to one of the local hospitals in Jackson, not the Foot Hospital, but probably on to the medical center that exists at the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. Simply precautionary, once again. That looks fairly encouraging. We saw 2 IV bags hanging, but again, that is a precautionary sort of thing. So let's just be careful and wait for the official report, but it does look fairly promising.
And let's also locate where we are. We are about an hour and a half drive west of the Detroit Metro Airport, and it's only 30 minutes by helicopter to Detroit and, 15 minutes to Ann Arbor, which is about midway.
They continue to load A.J. Foyt. They want to make sure he's secure. That's Dr. Steve Olvey there, who is supervising the final loading procedure here. They have him into the helicopter. And the yellow flag now being displayed on the race course. We'll give you an indication as to why, but I believe it's because Vern Schupan in car 33 slowed on the racetrack, necessitating the yellow, though we have another report that Bobby Unser may have just tagged the wall and then continued on, just white-walled the tire, as we used to say. Unser's car is in the pits now, and the crew is working on it. They have the car in. Here comes Johnny Rutherford coming in. As I said, the report, Charlie, was that Bobby Unser may have just tapped the wall. He is certainly in the pits for a long stop. Helicopter with A.J. Foyt now leaving.
So all of the leaders now coming into the pits. Officially, we have 103 laps complete of a scheduled 250-lap race. And from all of us at NBC, we wish you well, A.J., and hurry back, because racing's not the same unless you're in the field.
So as the helicopter leaves the racetrack, the question is Bobby Unser's machine, because the report was that he just ever so lightly tapped the wall, but at 200 miles an hour, even the lightest brush can mean severe damage.
And while we are under the yellow with the leaders coming into the pits, that means that Steve Krisolov is currently in the lead.
Bobby Unser's car is sitting there. They're working on the right front of the car, looking at the suspension. This is a long stop and not the kind that you can afford in a 500-mile race. And the yellow flag is out.
All right, the standings. We have Krisolov out in front at this moment. And we'll be back with more of the Michigan 500. All right, we're back at the Michigan 500. Let's go down to Gary Gerould. Gary?
Well, we're standing here now. We have Dr. Olvey, who has just come out from the infield medical center. Dr. Olvey, what can you tell us about the condition of A.J.?
Well, first of all, Gary, he was alert in the wake at the time that we sent him in the helicopter. He has a bad laceration and possible fracture of the right arm, a puncture wound and possible fracture of the left leg. He, as I said, he was conscious and alert. There are no apparent internal injuries. So if all that holds true, he should get along quite well.
Now, where is he being transported?
We're taking him to the University of Michigan Hospital in Ann Arbor.
All right, Dr. Olvey, thank you very much.
Thank you,
That's the official word at the moment on A.J. Foyt, who just left this medical infield compound here at Michigan International Speedway.
All right, thank you for that report. Now let's take a look at the official standings. Johnny Rutherford is the leader. Mike Mosley is second. Al Unser is third. Bill Alsop is running fourth. And Jose Legarza is running fifth.
So with Johnny Rutherford bringing the field around back to the green flag, and the green flag flying once again, The question will be, will this become a sprint, Charlie? Johnny Rutherford comes down, drops below Jerry Carl and Gary Bettenhausen and sails off into the first turn. But the rest of the crews are going to have to decide, do they chase him or do they take it easy? It's getting a little darker. There's a possibility of rain. In 20 laps, they could call the race officially. They would legally be able to call it should the rain downpour.
That would be at 126 laps, which is 1 lap past the halfway mark. The problem of losing light is getting dark because it's overcast.
The visibility, of course, is always a great question. More often than not, the problem is sunlight in the sunset coming into their eyes. But because it is overcast, it might give them a little bit of a break here. There is Bill Alsop, currently running in 4th place and running smoothly. But he is closing in on the leaders right now as he comes up behind Mike Mosley.
Alsop, as you know, if you've been with our coverage throughout the afternoon, is carrying the onboard NBC camera that has brought us some exciting shots today. Another problem, to go back to the haze as it gets dark today, you begin to lose a depth perception. That's the first thing the drivers will notice.
And darkness is certainly contributory to that, and if you lose it, then you don't know exactly where to let off, though you can still do it by markers, but it's certainly a problem. Bill Alsop moves out and around Mike Mosley. What a fine job of driving he's doing, and I wonder if Mosley is not suffering some handling problems because Mosley moved down low on the race course and Alsop took the higher or the faster line.
So Alsop is now running in 3rd. Garza is running in 4th as Mosley has dropped back to 5th. And as you know, the early story was Mike Mosley because he charged to the front and was running away from everybody.
It appears that Mike, at this moment at least, is nursing his car. Something else we probably ought to mention is that this ride with Bill Alsop right now is really something that he has waited for all his life. He has wanted to run in these big cars. He's wanted to run well, and he's doing it right now.
Now let's go down to Bruce Jenner. Bruce?
Well, right now they're working on Bobby Unser's car, and with me is Roger Penske. And Roger, what happened, do you know?
Well, we lost a right front wheel bearing, it looks like. And we've changed the entire right front upright.
You got to try to restart it and get him back in.
Okay.
Luckily, you had the spare parts.
Yeah, we had the spare parts in the pits, and we lost 4 or 5 laps.
Luckily, he's back out there. At least it's fixable.
And they're having a bit of problem getting Bobby started out of the pits, but they've got him loose.
At least they were able to get him back out on the track.
Right, yeah. Well, we'll go up and see how far down we are, but it's going to be a long race, so we got to stay in. That's why we fixed it.
Let's just keep the rain away.
I hope so.
All right, Charlie.
Roger Penske feels that now with 110 laps complete that there's still a lot of racing left here this afternoon with the weather and the overcast holding on.
Well, Mike Mosley continues to fall backward through the field. He is now back in 7th position. Bob Lazier, Tony Bettenhausen, and Jose Lee Garza have all managed to get past him. Our leader is Johnny Rutherford. In 2nd place is Al Unser, who we've not seen a great deal of throughout the afternoon, but obviously he's been doing a very fine job just taking it easy. He's a very smooth driver, not that spectacular, but he certainly does win a great deal, and he's managed to slide into 2nd place, so he's about a full straightaway back.
And he's driving for Bobby Hillen's Longhorn Racing team out of Midland, Texas. And of course, Midland, Texas with Jim Hall is becoming one of the...
Johnny Rutherford's in trouble. He's spinning. It looked like something broke on his car. Rutherford, the leader, spinning on the backstretch, going into 3. I'm not sure. He shredded a tire. So Johnny Rutherford catches it, gets it under control. Charlie, he can drive it into the pits here if they can repair it. Look, the left front is up and freewheeling. He is driving only using the right side. He's keeping it going. His concern is going to be how much damage that shredded tire is doing to the chassis right now, because it's beating it hard. It's also hitting the ground and wearing away at the metal, but Rutherford's going to give a try out of it. He's headed down into the pit area. Everybody's going to have to watch because he's only going to be braking with 2 wheels when he gets there. He's coming in slow, being a little conservative. He brings it to a stop. Now the crew, Steve Roby and company, are going to have to go to work. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Johnny Rutherford up on the air jack. Steve Roby going to work as the crew chief on the backside. Roby is saying, cut it off, I believe. Apparently the problem is substantial. They were prepared and were starting to change all 4 tires. You can see the flat spots on the tires after the spin. Roby, however, indicates that maybe the afternoon is over. We don't want to be premature. Now he's going back into action, trying to change. Rutherford steaming, of course, sitting in the cockpit after running up near the front all afternoon. Jim Hall out near the front of the car, supervising, trying to figure out and assess the damage. Roby now looking more dejected over on the right rear side. That, of course, was the tire that was shredded. You could see as Rutherford came in on the pits. Definitely a long, long stop. Whether JR will be able to get back in the race, we can't answer just yet. Certainly, if he does, his chances of victory have taken a tremendous pounding in this incident.
Well, these ground effects cars depend upon that fiberglass to be able to sustain themselves out on the racetrack. The tire, after it shredded, continued to hold on to the rim and was beating into that fiberglass. It looked like it destroyed a lot of it. I've said fiberglass, it's actually a graphite compound because it's much lighter than fiberglass. If they destroyed any of that right rear section of the race car itself, he would not have ground effects, therefore he couldn't race. And it looks like that's what it's done. Johnny Rutherford is unbuckled and is climbing out of the car. So it's the end of the day for Johnny Rutherford.
Now let's go back and see what happened to Johnny Rutherford and watch the great driving of JR.
Well, it looked, you can see a chunk of tire, just looked like the tire burst, whether he ran over something or what the problem was, but certainly the right rear let go. Johnny caught it, spun it away from the fence, and is now trying to drive it to a stop before it gets into anything. He's got it pointed straight. He's running across the grass. That's an incredible driving job because there's absolutely no adhesion on that grass. And then when he gets it out on the track, the left front is not touching, the right front is not touching. He's driving it on two wheels.
Now let's go down to Bruce Jenner. He's with Jim Hall. Bruce?
Jim, what happened? John hit some trash on the straightaway. It cut the right rear tire, and he spun it through 360 degrees. It's torn up the suspension on the right rear, and it did take an hour to fix it, so we're going to roll it away.
That's it, huh?
Yeah.
I guess that's racing, huh? How
guess
disappointing.
So. Yeah, a little.
Luckily you got the good days.
Yeah.
Okay. Charlie?
That's not a little disappointing. That's a lot disappointing.
For Johnny Rutherford and Jim Hall, that is a giant disappointment. They take their racing very seriously.
And they certainly should. All right. We're at the Michigan 500, one of the yellow, 114 laps complete. We'll be back with more of our race coverage in just a moment. We're back under the yellow, now 115 laps complete. So we'll have at least one more lap to go. Under the yellow, let's go down to Gary Gerould.
Well, Charlie, here's Johnny Rutherford. And John, first of all, you did a magnificent job of hanging on to that race car. That's got to be one of those moments when the heart comes right up in the throat.
There's not time enough for the heart to come up in the throat. It happened so quickly that I don't honestly know which happened first, but evidently we lost a right rear and a left front. And I don't know whether the left front went after I got into the infield, into the gravel, and it punctured a hole in it, or whether it was, I think it was gone before because it was distorted and flopping, but the right rear let go, and the car did a 360 down the back stretch and went off into the infield grass, and I came back out, put it in gear, started the engine, the engine had died, and I started the engine and drove it back into the pits, and the damage was too severe to the right rear suspension and parts of the car that we couldn't continue.
It appeared as you pulled up in the pits after you drove it back in, you had every intention of getting that thing back on and back on the racetrack.
Yes, we had the race won, I reckon. The car was working finally very good, and we were out running everybody on the racetrack, had a nice comfortable lead, made our pit stop. Things were, I think, looking real good, and that's racing.
Well, I'm glad you're able to smile about it. I don't know if everybody could in this situation, but John, I know there'll be a lot of other days. We look forward to seeing you next week in Milwaukee.
Oh, we'll be there for sure. You can count on it.
All right, that's the story in the Johnny Rutherford pit. Let's go back upstairs.
We've had quite an attrition rate today. We started with 37 cars. We're down now to 21 cars as we are under the yellow. 115 laps complete. This will be 116 as we come by the start-finish line. And Paul, here the cars that have dropped out.
Well, on lap number 5, it was Bill Whittington that came out of the race. 23 laps in, Bill Temporo had an engine failure. Herm Johnson, his fire in the pit. Salt Walther, an engine failure at 53 laps. Then Dick Simon, his turbocharger finally gave up. Kevin Cogan suffered a fire in the pit. It affected him on the straightaway, and he had to pull it in. And Johnny Rutherford, of course, we just saw him with the blown tire. Apparently he ran over something out on that backstretch. So Johnny Rutherford out of the race. And by the way, Charlie, the identical thing happened to Johnny Rutherford 3 years ago here. You will remember when he ran over the nose of Danny Ongayas' car after Ongayas tagged the wall, and he did the same thing. He caught it and drove it in, hoping to change the tire.
He was coming he went right through the grass, the infield, headed for the pits, and he wanted to get back out in the race. Here are the official standings. Al Unser and Bill Alsop running 1-2. They're together. Garza is running third, Lazier fourth, and Mosley is running fifth. And they are also running together. So those are the battles that will be shaping up when we go back to the green flag.
Perhaps we should repeat, A.J. Foyt has an apparent compound fracture of his right arm, a puncture wound, and a possible fracture of his left leg, and should now be at the University of Michigan Medical Center. He was taken there by helicopter. So we're still under the yellow at Michigan International Speedway. The car is being brought around, and it has been Al Unser that has been able to move up to the front.
Well, this has been one of those days in racing that you hear about, but that you don't want to see again. We've had a lot of accidents. We've had a lot of yellows because of it, and we've had a reds because of the fire. And we ask Al Unser, does an accident bother him while he is racing?
The only thing I think that a driver is concerned about is making sure that if something happens to somebody, that they get out of the car okay and everything's fine. And that's, with my brother, that's the only thing I'm concerned about. If he is involved in in an accident, as long as he gets out of it, it doesn't bother me.
And Paul, all of the race drivers at any level have that ability to pull the screen down when accidents happen. The theory being that it won't happen to me, it'll happen to somebody else. But in reality, it's happened to almost everybody that has been in racing at this level.
Yes, but it should not be treated as an irreverence or anything. It is simply what professionally you have to do to be able to do well at this sport. They call it drawing the curtain across your eyes. You concentrate on driving and not on anything else.
It becomes a fact of life in auto racing in reality.
Of course, A.J. Foyt also out of the race. We did not include him a moment ago as a result of the accident out in the second turn.
And we'll be back with more of the Michigan 500 right after these messages from your local station. We're back at the Michigan 500. We have officially 118 laps complete. Right now, the leader under the yellow is Al Unser. Bill Alsop is running second, Garza third, Lazier, and then Mosley. Let's go down to Bruce Jenner.
One of the most dramatic breakthroughs in safety for cars is A.J. Foyt's car, who is totally destroyed. The whole right side has gone from the car. Is this little piece of equipment right here. It's called the Aeroquip Crashworthy Fuel Coupling. Because of this piece of equipment, it has substantially reduced the possibilities of fire. As you saw in A.J.'s car, when it did hit the wall, it did not break into flames. Where right behind me, this pit was totally destroyed when they were trying to refuel. So they've been able to substantially reduce the possibilities of fire with this little piece right here. It's interesting that the development of the crashworthy fuel coupling stemmed from combat action in Vietnam. As helicopters ferried troops and made raids, they were often victims of enemy fire, and frequently the results were tragic. Ultimately, however, came the design and refinement of a coupling between the fuel line and the tank that would break apart on impact and automatically seal off each half of the hose before it would break, a procedure now effectively adapted to race cars.
The tanks and fuel systems were tested at AVSUR in Phoenix, Arizona, and then committed to full-scale dynamic testing. And the tests were eminently successful. And the valves were used on the now famed Huey helicopters in Vietnam, applied, used, evaluated, and they were very, very successful in Vietnam, such that thermal trauma was virtually eliminated. In 1973, there was a rather significant crash at Indianapolis in which an individual died as a result of his thermal injuries. And at that time, it was elected to study the technology used in aircraft and perhaps apply it to race cars.
Now a feature on all race cars, the crashworthy coupling brakes on impact, sealing off both sides of the hose line, which prevents loss of fuel and substantially reduces the hazard of fire. Well, I guess the proof is in the pudding. A.J.'s car was totally destroyed and there was no leakage of fuel. So this little device, it's been out for 7 years. There has been no death because of fire. I guess it works. Makes it a little bit safer. Charlie?
All right, thank you, Bruce, for that report. Right now, under the yellow, Al Unser is leading. Bill Alsop, running right next to him, is in second. Jose Garza is running third with Bob Lazier. in fourth right next to him, followed by Mike Mosley, Rick Mears, Tony Bettenhausen, Steve Krisloff, Bobby Unser, and Pancho Carter, those being the top 10.
Jose Lee Garza moves his car back and forth on the track, trying to keep the tire temperatures up. He's become a wonderfully popular young driver this year, and the fans just love this young driver from Mexico City.
During last week's Sports World, we aired a Sports Journal report about the controversy between USAC and CART, the two sanctioning bodies of IndyCar racing. At the end of the report, we stated that John Cooper, president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, refused to be interviewed and, quote, refused to permit, end quote, any other spokesman from USAC to appear in the story. We incorrectly attributed this statement to Mr. Cooper. The statement was made to Sports Journal by Dick King, the president of the United States Auto Club.
The green flag is out and flying at Michigan International Raceway, and Al Unser acknowledges it and picks up the speed. He is leading this race, and in coming back to the green, he really turned on the power and left Bill Alsop in second place, sitting some distance back, almost a half of a straightaway now, as there comes Bill Alsop off the corner. Also in the battle coming up toward the front is Jose Lee Garza and Bob Lazier. So a battle for first, a battle for second. There is Garza leading Lazier into turn 3. Battles in 2 positions on the racetrack.
Al Unser, 42 years of age. Bill is first. Bill Alsop is second. He's 43. And then we have the youngster, Garza, at 22. And then Bob Lazier at age 42. We mentioned earlier, this is a sport for the old folks.
Well, Bob Lazier comes out of road racing. In fact, I raced against him in the Formula Ford several times. He's a very smooth driver because he learned in that category of running in the Formula Fords, which is a machine without a great deal of power. You see Bob Lazier sitting right behind Jose Lee Garza, who learned his driving in the go-karts. In fact, won his first race in Mexico in go-karts, another area that really teaches you very young how to go fast. There's 2 very fast men.
Lazier, a former Super V champion, listed as a rookie in Champ Cars, though. This is his first full year out.
It is his first full year, and he has really pleased crowds. So the first time we saw him back at Phoenix when NBC covered that race, it was in the second lap that unfortunately he got tangled with another car and pushed up into the wall. And when we saw him climb out of the car, he was such a disappointed young man. Now Bob Lazier is making his bid as they come upon slower traffic, but Garza is picking the high line, and Lazier has decided that that is the place for him to be. He's going to stay back behind Jose Lee Garza, at least until they come off the corner. But it's quite a battle for third place that we're seeing here.
So a pair of rookies running in third and fourth, but 20 years of age separating them.
Garza now picking up on the high side, and Lazier continuing to follow, though it appears that Lazier is just casually staying behind him. Let me assure you that is not the case. Lazier is trying every trick in the book that he knows. As he closes up, pulls power on the straightaway, drafts behind Garza, and pulls out alongside. Now can he hold the line low on the track? Apparently he cannot. Garza picks up the high side, and Lazier is forced to duck in behind him once again. These cars are capable of drafting. You saw it there. Though the one thing they really have to do is to keep the aerodynamics working on the chassis. They have to keep one half of the car out in clean air, so they don't draft directly behind, just half behind, because they still need the downforce that's created by the ground effects.
Jose Lee Garza of Mexico, and earlier we asked him how does he feel about running with the veterans.
It's quite exciting, and it puts a lot of pressure on you, because it's not easy to run wheel-to-wheel with one of those guys, knowing that, you know, they've got so much more experience that they can get you anywhere they want.
Boy, doesn't he have a great smile? One of the handsome young men in auto racing. First time we saw him was at Phoenix this year when he captured the crowd there, and went on, of course, to capture it, as everyone knows, at Indianapolis, where he was named the Rookie of the Year.
Watch Bob Lazier as he uses that drafting technique once again. He's trying to build up revs and hopefully can just get his nose ahead of Garza as he comes into the turn. The distance is about 25 feet, but Garza is able to maintain his position a little higher on the racetrack, though Lazier closes up very slowly. While it is a race at speeds of around 200 miles an hour, it is really measured in inches. Can I get 3 or 4 inches, 1 foot maybe, on the fellow in front of me? There Lazier makes his try once again. Bob Lazier pulling alongside on the inside of Garza. You see it from an aerial shot. Bob Lazier has managed to push by Garza and picks up third place.
So it is now Al Unser, Bill Alsop, Bob Lazier in third, and Garza is running fourth. Rick Mears is still in fifth, followed by Mike Mosley, Pancho Carter, Tony Bettenhausen, Steve Krisaloff, and Bobby Unser.
So Bob Lazier uses drafting to his advantage and gets past Jose Garza and is sitting in third place. It's an exciting battle that we're watching for third place. Al Unser is our leader. Bill Alsop sits in second place.
And a look at Bob Lazier, currently running in third place. Looking for his first win in Indy cars, as is Garza.
The IndyCar is a highly complex machine. Its construction is complex. If you've never seen a race car in pieces, what you're about to see will be interesting. If you're a race fan, I think you'll find this very fascinating. View of that car. Bobby Helen's Longhorn racer currently in the lead, driven by Al Unser. And those artistic photographs, by the way, were taken over months of construction by photographer Chet Jezierski.
Officially now 131 laps complete, so the race is official. We had to go 126 in case they had to call it because of the weather or because of the loss of life.
There is Pancho Carter, who has moved up into fifth place. Now, you remember, he's had quite a course to get there. He started out toward the front, and then he got involved in some oil along with Larry Dixon. He spun the car out in the first turn all the way down onto the grass and was able to keep the engine running, keep it started, and now has moved up, and he is right behind Jose Garza, who is sitting in fourth place. And Carter, despite the spin, is really moving up, hoping to challenge for the lead.
So the top five: Al Unser, Bill Alsop, Bob Lazier, Garza, and then Pancho Carter, as Carter sets sail for position number 4. Garza will try and hold him off, as we'll be checking out that battle. Now, an interesting thing on Garza, he has changed his racing setup since we saw him earlier this year in Phoenix. In other words, he was involved in a partnership, and now they figured they would go ahead and run their own operation.
Apparently, he made the decision that trying to field 2 cars was very difficult. He had Jeff Brabham, the son of the world driving champion, driving as a teammate with him, but I think Garza finally decided it really takes too much energy to try and keep 2 cars going, especially in your rookie year, so he's concentrating on his own ride. Here is Pancho Carter, now beginning to challenge Jose Garza for 4th place. Garza is out in front, the rookie. Carter, the long-time veteran, and he has really shown the worth of years of driving experience on this track today. Now he's going to try. Garza on the low side coming into the turn. Garza running smoothly around the corner, and Pancho right up behind him. Ducks in behind him, hoping to pick up the draft.
Pancho Carter at age 30, but this is his 8th year of driving championship cars. He is a former midget and sprint car champion. He has the experience over Garza, comes in underneath him, and he takes it. Pancho Carter moves into 4th place. Now, Garza has been passed twice. He's dropped now from 3rd to 5th. Is he beginning to slow down?
Well, you have to ask that question. We'll try and get a clock on him up here and find out if he is running at his normal speed. It appears that he has, and he's just being outdriven, in this case by Pancho Carter, who I can't say enough about the drive that he's done today, moving from the front to the back and then back up to the front once again. So there is Garza. The question is, maybe it is mishandling now, and he is being forced to slow down just a little bit. The clock is on Jose Garza, car number 55. he
Garza
brings it
from
around.
Mexico City. We have officially 135 laps complete of a scheduled 250-lap, 500-mile race here at the Michigan International Speedway.
And at this point in the race, there are 9 cars running on the leader lap, running with the leader, Al Unser. Here is Garza. This clock time will be slightly affected now because he has the slower car of Phil Kaliva in front of him. Kaliva moves up and gives him racing room. Garza comes around 37, 38 seconds, 39.2 seconds. The one-lap speed for Jose Le Garza. He's averaging just over 183.6 miles an hour. That's a pretty good racing speed, though it's well down off of the speed that he was qualifying at.
Jose Le Garza of Mexico City, currently in 5th place. The leader is Al Unser, and we've got a problem. Car number 64, that is Steve Chassis. And now let's go down to Bruce.
Here's a man with me today, right now, Dick Simon, who has had his problems. Tell us about it. Right from the beginning of the day, your pit got burned up and you lost everything.
Yes, we did, Bruce. Actually, we were very fortunate nobody got hurt in the pits. The pit in front of us, Herm Johnson's, caught on fire and the wind was blowing our direction. It burned everything up completely. Thanks to a lot of teams, we were able to get back into the race. They loaned us some parts, spare tires, etc. Unfortunately, when we got back in, the engine blew up a few laps later. After the turbocharger broke, we came in, changed that, and went back out in the engine. It just wasn't our day in one side, but on the other, the fellow team members were very gracious to us, and I'd have to thank them, and I'm just glad we were here.
What about the visibility out there? It started getting a little bit darker right now, and you just came in a minute ago. Is it getting a little bit tougher for the drivers?
Well, Bruce, I think that the visibility it really doesn't matter that much because it's clear enough and bright enough that you can see, and as it gets a little darker, it seems like the track turns a little blacker as far as through the helmet. I don't think that's a problem at all. I think actually the track is good and the race is a good one. I think the people are seeing a good race.
They certainly are. Sorry you're out of it. It's always next week.
Well, I wish we were in it too. Our sponsor, Vermont American, has a lot of people here.
All right. Charlie?
There's Steve Chassis' machine. He pulled it off the race course and right up to the gate, apparently out. Steve from Indianapolis, Indiana. This is the identical machine to Mike Mosley's car. He's been helping with the research. It's a stock block-powered Dan Gurney 1981 Eagle.
Running second is Bill Alsop, and running third is Bob Lazier, who you see here. And the separation as Lazier tries to close on Alsop. The leader is Al Unser in car number 8, driving the Longhorn Racing. And the standings through 138 laps, Al Unser, followed by Alsop, Lazier, Carta, and Garza.
Now Bob Lazier heads into the pits.
And we'll be back with more of our coverage in just a moment. All right, we're back. Al Unser coming out of the pits. He was in just over 12 seconds. Garza had a problem in turn 1. He was kicking out some smoke, and he has come into the pit.
Well, it looks like Garza's turbocharger just suddenly let go on the racetrack, and he pulled it down quickly. Might have, depending on what broke there, might have had a little oil spray on the track also. There you see it suddenly let go and let that blue plume of smoke, which indicates oil is coming out of there and burning somewhere. And Garza put his hand in the air, indicated he was slowing. Kept it up fairly high out of the racing groove, but he has to cross it here. So the question is, did he put anything down on the racetrack? At the same time, Mike Mosley had his problems. He apparently ran out of fuel on the course and had to come in very slow and be pushed to a stop.
All right, let's go down to Bruce Jenner. Bruce?
Right now I'm with Jose Le Garza and a tough break. What happened to your motor?
Well, the engine just quit on me. It's quite a disappointment, but such is racing.
I noticed the last few laps before the engine did go, you were falling a little bit more off the pace. Could you feel the motor going?
Yeah, it started actually going away before the last yellow lap. I could feel it. I could feel it was, starting to act up. And it was just a matter of time, and, I was sure it wasn't going to go the distance.
Tough break.
Yeah, that's racing.
It certainly is. All right, let's go back up to Charlie.
Harry McDonald is getting a tough break, too. His car number 45 has had its engine let go. He's a local driver here, but because that engine is gone, they've now put the yellow flag out. They want to take a good look at the race course, make sure there's not too much oil or too many pieces.
144 laps complete.
Well, Charlie McDonald stays out. He stays out on the racetrack. He's gone over the line once. I wonder if he even knows the yellow is for him. As long as he stays out there, he has the possibility of putting oil on the racetrack and making it very dangerous. Pancho Carter in for the stop. He is in the lead at the moment. He stayed out on the yellow, picked up the lead, so Pancho Carter, a stop by the leader.
And so we have a situation when a driver simply does not realize that he's the one causing the problem.
Well, normally on the straightaway, you take a look at your instruments and take a look at your rear view mirrors, and when you look at the rear view mirrors, you ought to see that smoke behind you. Now, he apparently knows it now. Let's see if he's going to come in. He's coming through the 4th turn and drop down very low. Yes, McDonald is going to bring it in now, but he has 1 lap out there.
145 laps complete. Make that 146. We'll be back with more of our race coverage after these messages from your local station. We are under the yellow. 146 laps completed of a 250-lap, 500-mile race.
Well, as a result of the scramble and the pit stops once again, we now have Pancho Carter sitting up in the lead. And an interesting thing is that one that Bill Alsop has stayed up toward the front, but more interesting, and probably more as a result of the pit stops, but he's doing a fine job today, is car number 16, Tony Bettenhausen, who has managed to stay up near the front. The official standings at the moment: Al Unser leads, Bob Lazier 2nd, Rick Mears 3rd, Steve Krisiloff 4th, and Pancho Carter down in 5th. Now that is coming out of the pit stops.
Rick Mears is currently running among the leaders, and he is one of the young titans that we will be seeing more and more in IndyCar racing. And most of the time we see him just in the cockpit of a race car, so we forget the uniqueness of the young man such as Rick Mears, one of the outstanding drivers of Indy cars that we've had the enjoyment of watching over the past few years.
Rick Mears burst onto the scene with major success, the same as he had in the early 70s in off-road racing. His Indy win was a major victory on his way to the '79 National Driving Championship. But the real thrill was just driving for the Roger Penske team.
It surprised me as much as it did anybody, and he told me he had a deal to offer me, and there wasn't any way I could refuse it. So I guess I'd run Champ cars for about a year and a half, and I was fortunate enough that I got in some equipment that would stay together. And that's the game plan we followed. We knew we couldn't outrun the guys, so we just tried to outlive them, and that's what we worked on.
But the star of 1979 and 1980 gave way to the eventual national driving champion Johnny Rutherford and his teammate Bobby Unser. But the senior member of the Penske team knew Rick was to be reckoned with.
Rick is plenty quick. There's nothing wrong with him. He's quick, he's reliable, he's not apt to make so many mistakes. He makes far less mistakes than most drivers that go as fast as he does, and he darn sure goes fast. And sure he goes through some learning curves, but guys, you got to figure out that the guy really doesn't have that many years of experience as far as driving Champ cars or Indy cars, and I just I think he's probably the best of what I would call the young breed of the new breed.
When Rick Mears burst back into the national spotlight once again, it was again at Indianapolis. But this time, his car was on fire in the pits. A refueler had sprayed over Rick Mears, and it caught fire. Mears was burned on his face. But then he came back at the Twin Atlanta races. 2 wins back-to-back, even shutting the door on Mario Andretti on the last lap of the last race. It was an important day, especially important for Rick Mears. It was a victory that he badly needed.
It was very good. It helped. It helped get me back on course. It helped get me some of my confidence back. I really felt good for the guys. It helped them. A couple of them were hurt. I felt worse than I was. And I was really happy for them to be able to get back into the swing of things as quick as we did. And mainly, I think it just helped for the team's confidence all the way around.
Rick Mears is certainly strong behind the wheel. He has victories to prove it. But if he needs improvements, Bobby Unser says that it's his technical background that he needs to work on.
Well, I think that Rick will have to start working more on development work. I think he has a ways to go on that yet. I think he has quite a ways to go on it.
Still, Rick Mears is living a young driver's dream, and he is happy with the Roger Penske team.
Working for Penske is great. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I've had a lot of people say, well, isn't he a slave driver? Isn't he tough to work for? And he's really not. The guy he's been exceptionally well with me, and I think as long as you hold up your end of the bargain and get the job done, there's no problem whatsoever, as long as you perform.
Rick Mears, one of the young titans of IndyCar racing. And when Bobby Unser and Johnny Rutherford and A.J. Foyt decide to hang it up, it will be Rick Mears that will assume his proper position in championship racing.
Rick Mears currently running in 6th as we're back under the green, Paul.
And Pancho Carter is leading. We are back under green. That is Al Unser that is sitting back one car behind Pancho Carter. Al is in second place, so he has begun his chase for Pancho Carter. And I'm not sure, did we see a slight show of smoke at the right rear of Pancho's car there? Al Unser trying to make his closure now. Al in second place. He has his sights set on our leader, Pancho Carter.
So the official standings now, Pancho Carter in first, Al Unser running second, Tony Bittenhausen is running third, Bill Alsop is fourth, Bob Lazier is fifth, Rick Mears is sixth, Steve Kritzloff is seventh, and Tom Bigelow is eighth. Gary Bittenhausen is running ninth. We have 17 cars remaining. We started with 37 on the grid today.
In the case of both Pancho Carter and Rick Mears, we're talking about some very smooth racing drivers. They've been doing a fine job. Here is a battle for third place. Tony Bettenhausen in car number 16 is in third, and Bill Alsop is sitting right behind him trying to pick up third.
152 laps complete, so we have 98 laps to go in the Michigan 500.
Tony Bettenhausen moves below the slower car of Phil Kaliva. Bill Alsop does the same as he is chasing Alsop. This is a battle for third. And Bettenhausen has some slower traffic to continue to contend with. Alsop is sitting right behind him. It seems that Bill is just biding his time, waiting until they string out of this traffic, and then he will go up and begin his challenge.
We would like to point out that the camera on Bill Alsop's car that we had the early coverage is no longer working, so we do not have that shot live for you as we had earlier. In case that you might be just looking for it, Pancho Carter, Al Unser running 1-2, Bittenhausen also running 3-4.
Now Tony Bettenhausen continues to pass slower traffic on his way in third place. This young man has worked very hard with his equipment this year. He goes around Larry Dixon. It is a dream. He comes out of a racing family. His father was a race driver. Two of his brothers, Merle and Gary, are race drivers. He's a fine young man.
Now let's go down to Gary.
Standing down here, we've just checked in at the Infield Medical Center trying to get updated information on A.J. Foyt. We understand from the chief doctor here that the helicopter arrived safely in Ann Arbor. A.J. is now en route in ground transportation from the helicopter landing site to University Hospital, the University of Michigan Hospital in Ann Arbor. We understand that the problem, he was resting comfortably, experiencing pain as could well be expected with the right arm. We are told that he was kibitzing with the nurses, however, which is certainly an encouraging sign. They're awaiting him now at University Hospital in Ann Arbor. So continued encouraging reports on A.J. Foyt.
Thank you, Gary, and that is encouraging. We now have 155 laps complete, 95 laps to go. Pancho Carter is the leader, followed by Al Unser, Tony Bittenhausen, Bill Alsop, and Bob Lazier. We'll be back with more of our coverage in a moment. On with Paul Page, Gary Gerald, Bruce Jenner. This is Charlie Jones, Michigan 500. Pancho Carter is the leader. We want to alert you across the country that in about 5 or 6 minutes, those of you in the east and the central time zones, some of the stations will be cutting away for NBC's nightly news. After the nightly news, they will, of course, then come back to us for the conclusion of this race, but many of the stations in the west, you just stay with us, and we will continue with our coverage throughout the afternoon and the early part of the evening here in the east.
There is Pancho Carter, the leader. He is maintaining about a 2.5-second lead over Al Unser in second place. And occasionally in the aerial shots, as we did just a moment ago, you can get an idea of what race driving is all about as he pitches the back end around and lets the back end slide a little bit. Pancho Carter leading Al Unser. Al in the blue and white number 8 as Pancho Carter takes her through the second turn and down the back straightaway. Still about 2.5 seconds between Pancho and second place Al Unser.
And what an afternoon this would be for Pancho Carter. This young man is going for his first IndyCar win. He is currently in the lead at age 30, the former midget and sprint car champion, and he started driving championship cars, or Indy cars as they are better known, when he was only 22 years of age.
Well, Pancho Carter comes from Brownsburg, Indiana, a western suburb of Indianapolis, and grew up in the shadow of the Speedway. Another man that comes from a racing family. The relatives, Johnny Parsons is related to him, Dwayne Carter, the whole group grew up in the shadow of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. They wanted to race. He's come up through racing his whole life. He had a very bad crash on the 2nd of December in 1977 that almost stopped his racing career, but he worked hard to come back.
The battle for 4th place between car number 7, that is Bill Alsop, and car number 35, Bob Lazier. Alsop is in his 3rd year of racing championship cars, and Lazier in car number 35, although 42 years of age and a former Super V champion, is listed as a rookie, his first full year out on this particular circuit.
Here comes Alsop, and Lazier right behind him, using the benefit of the draft and also a bit of the benefit of Tony Bettenhausen being in front of him as he comes low and is looking to get by Bill Alsop. Now, if he can get that job done, then he sets sail for 3rd place, car number 16, Tony Bettenhausen. He doesn't have the job done yet. Here they come, side by side down the back straightaway. That's Tony Bettenhausen out in front. So this is a 3-car battle for 3rd place, and Lazier is the man that's trying to get past Alsop, and then hopefully in the same swoop, it'd be nice if he could come up and take on Tony Bettenhausen at the same time. But both Bill Alsop and Tony Bettenhausen will have something to say about that.
The ideal position seems to be underneath for the key passing that we've seen throughout the afternoon.
Well, it's certainly where his car is working at the moment. He's sitting down behind Alsop. He gets past Alsop, moves into 4th place, and is now chasing Bettenhausen.
Many of the stations, by the way, will be going away for the NBC Nightly News. Those of you in the West will stay with us for the conclusion. We'll be back in a half hour over most of these stations as we continue our coverage of the Michigan 500. The NBC Nightly News, welcome back to the Michigan 500. We have 205, now 206 laps complete, 44 laps to go.
Al Unser was leading this race, and then all of a sudden, while in the lead, the engine let go on the backstretch, and Al Unser came out of the race. As a result of that, Pancho Carter has now picked up 1st place, and he is running very well at the moment. In 2nd place, in car number 16 is Tony Bettenhausen. In 3rd place, we have Bob Lazier and Bill Alsop. In car number 7 is sitting back in 4th place. You're looking at Bob Lazier. There is Bill Alsop as they come around, and most of the first 4 positions seem satisfied just to maintain position at the moment.
And we will mention again that the first 4 positions of Pancho Carter, Tony Bettenhausen, Bob Lazier, and Bill Alsop, they are all looking for their first championship car win.
Now the crews are doing a little bit of calculating. 207 laps into the race. In the next 10 laps, Pancho Carter, the leader, probably will make a pit stop. Now, he stopped twice into the last yellow. The second time, the reason was simply to pick up the right side tires. But when they did that, they also hooked up the fuel. So maybe he can now push it to lap 220, 221. They're waiting to see if a yellow flag will come out for whatever reason. Hopefully not an accident, debris, oil on the racetrack. So now you have to wait. You sit there very, very patiently. You know fuel's running out of the tank. What you want to do is hopefully wait for that yellow if it comes out.
So the game of cat and mouse is underway. Pancho Carter leads. Tony Bettenhausen is running 2nd. In car number 16, Bob Lazier is running 3rd. Bill Alsop is 4th. Rick Mears is running 5th, but he is back quite a ways, followed by Tom Bigelow, Gary Bettenhausen, Scott Brayton, and now Phil Kaliva is in 9th place. But in reality, the top 4, Pancho Carter, Tony Bettenhausen, Bob Lazier, and Bill Alsop, are the 4 major factors of the race now with 209 laps complete.
And I think it bears saying one more time that 1st place, Pancho Carter, 2nd place, Tony Bettenhausen, 3rd place, Bob Lazier, and Bill Alsop. None of them have ever won a championship race.
Car number 16 is Tony Bettenhausen, 29 years of age. Running in 2nd place, Pancho Carter, the leader. Pancho is 30, so we have the 2 youngsters, Pancho Carter and Tony Bettenhausen, running 1-2, and then Bob Lazier at age 42 and Bill Alsop at age 43 are running 3 and 4.
Bill Alsop has now begun to do battle with Rick Mears, and Mears has actually been able to push past Alsop and pick up 4th place. So Bill Alsop is now sitting back in 5th. Tony Bettenhausen running smoothly in 2nd place.
Again, we started the afternoon with 37 cars on the grid, the normal 33, plus 2 that qualified as the promoter's option, and 2 more that qualified in a qualifying race last Saturday, and that took the total to 37. but we've had quite an attrition rate here today. And we are down to less than 15 cars. Our unofficial count was 13, and that is it. We now have 13 cars left out of the 37 that started.
One of the big questions before this race started was fatigue. The ability to take those lateral G-forces lap after lap after lap for 500 miles. It has never been done in an Indy car to this point. We have had some problems on the racetrack, accidents. We don't know if they are fatigue related, but I think we can safely say one thing. These are some very tired race drivers.
Now, we have many people that have joined us late, particularly in the East. Update two things that happened today. We had a pit fire in Herm Johnson's pit. Red flag. The race was stopped for about an hour and 35 minutes. And then we also had A.J. Foyt going into the fence. In turn 2, he has been taken by a helicopter to the hospital in Ann Arbor. The last report that we have, there is a leg injury on his left leg, an arm injury to his right arm, but he was kibitzing with the nurses in the hospital. So AJ seems to be all right. It's just going to take a little time for all of the injuries to heal.
He is one tough Texan and almost impossible to keep down. A.J. Foyt, a tremendous race car driver.
Pancho Carter, the leader of the Michigan 500. We've now completed 213 laps. This is a 2-mile oval, and it's a bank track, 18 degrees in the turn. The front straight is banked at 12 degrees, the back straight at 5 degrees.
Bob Lazier in third place, car number 35, running smoothly. There's just under 2 seconds separating first and second, and they have been maintaining those positions for the past several laps now. There's the interval now between first place, that's Pancho Carter coming through the turn, and Tony Bettenhausen behind him.
Bettenhausen not closing that much, as you said, content to sit here, wait till the final pit stop that they will be making within, in all probability, the next 7 to 10 laps, and then the sprint for the finish.
I think it's worthy of note, too, as we watch the first 2 places, to point out that sitting back in 7th place is Tony Bettenhausen's brother Gary, who's a real veteran of championship racing, and Tom Bigelow, another longtime veteran of championship racing, is currently sitting in 6th place.
Yellow flag is out. Yellow is out. Can we pick it up?
Car rolling slowly on the backstretch after hitting the wall. Bad damage to the right side. It comes to a stop. It is Larry Cannon, car number 99, but he climbs out of the machine, unstraps.
And he's had a rough afternoon. He's been in and out of the pits. He had all kinds of problems.
He was the first car to come into the pits. They did some work on the car, but he stayed with it. A tenacious fellow, Larry Cannon. Goes with the nickname Boom Boom. And he is now smacked the fence, smacked it hard, heavy damage to the right side. Pancho Carter is our leader,
and
215 laps, so it's an ideal time for the pit stop, and Pancho Carter takes advantage of it.
And this is exactly what he wanted to do.
Well, he didn't want to do it in this way, certainly, not with a car having an accident. But second place, Tony Bettenhausen comes in. You saw him pass by at the bottom. Let's see who comes out first. Let's go to Bruce Jenner.
Pancho Carter in the pits just hasn't done much. He's taking a little bit of fuel. Now, they're looking for this yellow because as John Cable said, his crew chief said they'd come in on about 220th lap. They're coming in earlier. He has a little bit of trouble getting out of the pits. He came in a little earlier to take advantage of that yellow flag, but Pancho Carter is back in this race.
So Carter comes out a little quicker pit stop for Bettenhausen.
And there is Bettenhausen coming off the pits right behind Carter. So first and second place coming out. Carter's crew was a little bit faster, especially considering that Bettenhausen was well down the track.
All right, we're under the yellow, 216 laps complete. We'll be back with more of our coverage of the Michigan 500 right after these messages. Better views from high above the Michigan International Speedway as you can look down on the Michigan 500 from our helicopter shot. And of course, we've had quite an attrition rate. We started today with 37 cars. These are the ones that went out very early in the race. To give you an update on, in case you joined us late, a particular driver that you might be interested in. And we have really weeded the drivers down. Rutherford, Tom Sneva, Dick Simon coming out. That was on lap 136 when Simon came out.
Harry McDonald, of course, blew his engine. As a result of that, they had to bring a yellow flag out. Jose Garza, another blown engine, overheating for the Krisiloff machine, blow-in engine for Mosley. So attrition on the equipment is really beginning to show. And, of course, the last one, Larry Cannon lost a tire, hit the wall. That is the reason for the yellow now.
And Al Unser came out when he was in the lead.
A blown engine, fatigue constantly, and on the racing engines, on the Cosworth engines. They were failing rather regularly there for a while.
So we have 12 cars and drivers remaining. Now completing 218 laps of this 250-lap race.
Now we have the pit stops done under this yellow. The championship cars here carry 40 gallons of fuel. They should get ideally 1.8 miles to the gallon. That scenario seems to have played out. That would mean 36 laps once they have filled the cars and assuming that they got a full fuel load. So if that is true, then this should be a sprint to the finish. Now, you're a crew chief. You get out your little arithmetic and try to find out, is your car really getting that mileage? Is it going to make it to the end of the race? And how much can the driver play with a boost in the race car?
31 laps to go. And we now have 12 cars remaining in the race, not including this one.
Larry Cannon lost a wheel, took the car up into the wall. Heavy damage to the right side of his race car.
It is still a bit, it's a hazy afternoon. Go ahead, Paul.
Pancho Carter is our leader. He comes around smoothly, and I still am, well, I'm excited certainly about Pancho, but I am excited, too, about the second and third place. Tony Bentonhausen, Bob Lazier. None of them have ever won a championship race. During the yellow flag, you have a chance to shift around in the cockpit, look around and see where you're at. I imagine they're all giggling to themselves just because they're that close to the lead.
And here is a look at Pancho Carter. We are still under the yellow. We have had a plethora of yellow flags today, plus the red flag that came out because of the fire in the pits. And let's go back to see what happened very early on in the race.
Well, it was certainly a frightening moment. The hose dumped fuel all over the pit area. The fire lit up. The refueler, you can see, is reacting from the heat. Herm Johnson climbed out of the car. They loaded the fire bottles onto him, and then the fire spread, and the hose blew off the front of the fuel tank. Fire trucks were brought in from everywhere. There is the explosion as the fuel hose came off, and it rocked that fuel tank. And everyone took off running. It was certainly a frightening moment and a very dangerous moment. And then A.J. Foyt, late in the race, got into the wall coming off of turn 2. It looked like something broke on the race car. He smacked the wall, then slid along it and stayed up against it. Foyt is now at a hospital. He's reported conscious. He has several fractures, but he's also giving the nurses some trouble. So he's apparently in at least halfway decent shape.
We are still under the yellow now with 220 laps complete, 30 laps to go. Johnny Rutherford, of course, had a problem in the back straight going into turn 3. He believes he picked up some debris, shredded the right rear tire, did a 360, a beautiful piece of driving. Then he headed out, turned it, stayed underneath the line, and brought it all the way into the pits. He wanted to go back out again, but of course he wasn't able to. They just need to do too much work on the car. And so that ended the afternoon for Johnny Rutherford.
You know, these cars have two-way radio communication with their pits, and Johnny Rutherford can be wonderfully eloquent at a moment like this. That might have been a fine conversation to listen to.
We may have had to bleep it a bit, though, I have a feeling at that time. And we also had a camera in the car, and that is an onboard camera of Bill Alsop. We'll go back to the start of the race, and this is what it looked like from a driver's standpoint if you were in the third row.
You saw the green light come on, the green flag come out from Bill Alsop's car in the third row, and watched him accelerate right along with the field. Then Bill Whittington lost control and had this spin, but you saw it from this angle as well as on board the car. Whittington over to the left, right across the front of Alsop's machine as he dives low.
And now Al Unser, as we mentioned, has been out of the race now for a few laps. Let's go down to Gary's with it. Gary?
Well, we're standing back in the garage area now, and it's a dejected Al Unser whose car performed so brilliantly, and I suppose the closer you get to the victory, the more pointed the disappointment is.
Yeah, it is. Everybody wants to know how tired I am. I'm more disappointed than I'm tired. So it's just one of those days, you know. The whole team worked very hard today, and we had at least a chance at it, and the motor broke, so here we are.
Can you find optimism at all in the fact that the car was working? I know you said all along this season it's been a struggle getting it up to speed. You were making the progress, then it looked like you were right there today battling for the lead or holding the lead much of the afternoon.
Well, this has been one of these weeks or 2 weeks, whatever you want to call it, that the car had our problems with it. We haven't been happy with the way it's been handling. And this morning when I came back from the Can-Am cars from yesterday, we made some more changes to it and just hope for the best, and here we are.
Well, we hope that your day tomorrow in the Can-Am competition is better than this one today, Al.
So do I.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Bruce Jenner now.
This is John Caples, Pancho Carter's crew chief, and can Pancho make it to the finish line without any more fuel?
Yeah, we're all right on our fuel. We have a little bit of a chassis condition that's bothering and aggravating our right front tire. Our last tire change, our right rear was a little smaller than the rest, and so we're understeering a little bit. And we're just trying to stay in front of Bettenhausen at the speed we're running to try to conserve everything. We have a little more speed left, but with that right front the way it is, we'd like not to have to use it that hard if we don't have to.
Yeah. Just time to sort of cross your fingers, huh?
Well, I got them crossed.
All right. We'll be back with more of the Michigan 500 right after these messages. And it's an exciting race, and we're looking forward to an exciting afternoon.
Standings through 222 laps. Carter, Bettenhausen, Lazier, Mears, and Alsop. They are running the top 5. We have only 11 cars now remaining in the race. We started with 37.
Recent yellows have separated those cars in the lead now somewhat, Charlie. The Carter, Bettenhausen, and Lazier car are all on the same lap together. They are the only 3 together on the course.
So Mears and Alsop are a lap down. And they're followed by Tom Bigelow, Gary Bettenhausen, Scott Brayton, Phil Kaliva, Roger Rager, and Larry Dixon. Those are the cars remaining. And we have had numerous lead changes, Paul. We started out early on. Tom Sneva led, Johnny Rutherford led, Mike Mosley led, Al Unser led. And we mentioned a moment ago about A.J. Foyt and the problem that he had. And here he is being assisted into the helicopter and taken to the hospital at Ann Arbor, which is only about 15 minutes away, 10 to 15 minutes away. And the report that we have from the hospital is that he has an arm problem on his right arm, a leg problem on his left leg, but is alert and is kibitzing with the nurses. And the green flag is out. And now the sprint to the finish, 225 laps complete, 25 laps to go.
The green flag flies over Michigan International Speedway, and you saw some nice driving there as the slower competitors decided to give the high line, the fast line, to Pancho Carter and Tony Bettenhausen, and they took off under that green flag. Pancho Carter moves out a bit and maintains his position. You see some dust coming up there. That's from oil dry that was spread on the racetrack a little bit earlier to try and suck some of the oil off the course to keep it safe. Tony Bettenhausen sitting in second place at about the same interval that he was at just before this yellow flag came out. But they are back to green flag racing now.
So it is Pancho Carter, Tony Bettenhausen, and Bob Lazier, now the top 3, followed by Rick Mears, Bill Alsop, Tom Bigelow, Gary Bettenhausen, Scott Brayton, Phil Kaliva, Roger Rager, and Larry Dixon. And now coming in is Bob Lazier into the pit.
Well, Bob Lazier, who was running in third, got passed by Rick Mears and then headed around into the pits. He was in 4th position when he came off the racetrack. His crew chief leans over. They always hook up the fuel lines just to make sure they have plenty of fuel, and the crew also always brings out the auxiliary starter, so in case the engine dies, they can restart it. They don't have onboard starters on an Indy car.
And was that a wave off from his crew chief that they are now out of the race, I believe?
Well, the conversation continues, but it sure looks like Bob Lazier has fallen out of competition. It is Pancho Carter that is leading right now, Tony Bettenhausen at second.
And that means that we have only 10 cars left in the race, 227 laps complete. Now let's go back to the leaders of the race today. Tom Sneva, then Rutherford. Sneva got it back. Mosley, who was the early on story. He started in 12th place and moved up to take the lead at lap 24.
Mosley was incredibly strong during his run. And then Tom Sneva picked it back from Mosley. Mosley took it back from Sneva. Sneva takes it back again as they seesaw it back and forth up through lap 55. Then Rick Mears picked it up for 2 laps. Mosley came out once again. Then we saw Tony Bettenhausen, who had moved his way up to the front. Johnny Rutherford picked up the lead up to lap 112. And Al Unser took it away when Johnny Rutherford blew his tire. Bill Alsop took it away when Unser came into the pits on a pit stop. Unser came back into the lead, had his engine let go, giving way to Pancho Carter, who is leading now.
So Pancho Carter in the lead now with 228 laps to play. Tony Bettenhausen is running second, and this race is distilled down to these two cars, the number 5 Pancho Carter and number 16 Tony Bettenhausen.
And Tony Bettenhausen is staying just over a second behind Pancho Carter, trying to keep up, trying to keep the leader in sight, and being ever aware of anything else that's happening on the race course, a slower car, anything that might give him the opportunity to pull up and pass the leader, Pancho Carter.
And let's mention once again that Pancho Carter, in his 8th year of driving Indy cars, and Tony Bettenhausen in his 3rd year, neither one have won an IndyCar race.
So the battle between Pancho Carter and Tony Bettenhausen is out in front. Roger Penske has 2 cars running in positions in the top 5. Rick Mears has moved up to 3rd place, passing Bill Alsop, who sits in 4th place, to do so, both of the Penske cars.
And we have 20 laps to go in the Michigan 500, a 250-lap race here at the Michigan International Speedway. Total purse of more than $500,000, and the winner will receive more than $100,000.
Pancho Carter, ever so smoothly, cocks the back end just a little bit every time he comes onto that 4th turn. Tony Bettenhausen just stays in there and stays following. 1.3 seconds behind the leader.
Pancho Carter, the leader. And early we had a chance to talk with him, and we asked him, will this really be a flat-out high-speed race? And here is Pancho's answer.
No, not really. During a race, if the car is working properly, you can run flat out during the race, too. The only thing you got to watch out for is traffic, or if the car starts changing its handling characteristics a little bit, or the track changes a little bit. Then you're going to have to correct for that and make sure that you still can run as fast as you can, but you're a little hesitant with the throttle instead of just barreling in there flat out like we do qualifying.
I have a feeling, though, right now he feels like he's qualifying. He's going to be going flat out a sprint race to the checker flag.
Well, in that last lap, Tony Bettenhausen picked up ever so much on Pancho Carter. He is now under 1 second. He is actually 0.9 of a second behind Pancho Carter and closing down on him.
We have completed 232 laps, 18 laps to go. Tony Bettenhausen, car number 16, Pancho Carter in car number 5.
They come across the line. He's picked up a bit more, 0.6 of a second now. So either Pancho Carter is slowing or Tony is gaining. But whatever it is, obviously we're going to have quite a fight for the lead here shortly.
So Pancho coming out of turn 2, down the back straight. Bettenhausen right behind him. Tony holding the same distance in 2nd place, now into turn 3.
We're talking these small increments of time. It's very hard to try and determine what might be happening there. But if we had the information that we gained from Johnny Caples, Pancho's crew chief, that they are having problems in the suspension on the right side of the car that they would prefer not to have, then I think it is, for the moment at least, safe to assume that Pancho Carter is having some handling problems, and Tony Bettenhausen is taking advantage of them.
And we have 16 laps to go. Again, out of turn 2 and down the back straight. Let's go down to Gary Gerould.
Well, here's Bob Lazier, and I know it's a great disappointment, Bob. It has to be a thrill at the same time as this bittersweet disappointment, just because you were running with the leaders this late in a 500-mile race.
Yes, Gary, I really felt very good that the crew seems to feel that we might have been leading the race even. So I think this has been a very confusing race, and because of it, we don't really know where we were, but we were running well. No one passed me all day. You know, the chassis is a 3-year-old or a 3-season-year-old chassis, and I think the team really put out an effort, and we got a good shot today.
Got a lot of fans down at this end, Bob. Congratulations. I know it's still a disappointment. Let's go now to Bruce Jenner, standing by with Jerry Carl.
Right now, Jerry Carl. And Jerry, You know, we did a piece earlier today about the big team, the more expensive team, the Penske, and yourself, who comes here on a very low budget. Penske's had his problems today. I guess sometimes it's even no matter how much money you got in the bank.
Well, that's kind of what happened to us today, too. You know, we were running pretty good. We were up there running 185, 186 all day, and I guess we were about 7th when the clutch gave up on me. And it's just one of these things, you know, the clutch had a couple of races on it, and we mic'd it up before we came here, and we decided to run it instead of putting a new one in. And that's the difference between having a good budget and going on a low budget. You know, you use things that are questionable sometimes, and it cost us. We were right up there running 6th or 7th, and then the clutch went out. But I think it's been a great day and a real competitive race, and I just really like to thank Roger Penske, and I'd like to thank PPG for sticking with us this year, you know, and I hope they come back and we'll do it again next year.
We'll see what happens, as always, next year.
Righto.
All right, let's go back to Charlie Jones.
All right, thank you, Bruce. As Tony Bettenhausen continues to close on Pancho Carter as they go down the back straight. We have completed 237 laps, 13 laps to go. All right, we'll be back with more of the Michigan 500. We'll take you to the conclusion right after these messages from your local station.
For Pancho's car, and I think Pancho saw him and decided that was too close for comfort, and nailed the throttle and the boost hard, and has put this interval of 0.3 of a second between them. As they come across the line, still 33/100 of a second separates first and second.
So it is Pancho Carter leading the way through turn 1. He heads for turn 2. Tony Bettenhausen in car number 16 is running second, and that is the battle at the Michigan 500 as we are coming to the closing laps. We have 241 laps complete. Pancho Carter, the leader. Tony Bettenhausen is running second. Rick Mears is third, followed by Bill Alsop, then Tom Bigelow, Gary Bettenhausen, Scott Brayton, Bill Kaliva, Roger Rager, and Larry Dixon. But the story involves the two young drivers, 30-year-old Pancho Carter and 29-year-old Tony Bettenhausen.
Well, this is the battle on the racetrack. Pancho Carter and Tony Bettenhausen, the battle for the lead. Let's go to the pits. Here's Gary Gerald.
Paul, this is Paul Deatlovich, the crew chief for young Tony Bettenhausen. Paul, you're so excited here. You got a real rooting section going in this pit.
I'll tell you, we're all out here. We're enjoying the race. Most of my help that we have is free help, so they get a pretty good charge out of it. We're a new team. This is our first year out. We have a 7-year-old car, and we're pretty excited.
5 hours ago, did you have any idea in your mind that you might be battling for the lead in this race?
I didn't know about battling for the lead. I knew we'd be battling for a top 5 spot.
How about strategy now in these last few laps?
Well, we made our strategy the last pit stop. We pitted under the yellow. It looked like we may have to pit 2 more times. As it looks, we only had to make the 1 pit stop, and we're going to go to the end on this.
All right, Paul Deatlovich, the crew chief for Tony Bettenhausen, who continues to stalk Pancho Carter in the sprint toward the checkered flag.
And we're closing in on a total of 500 miles, and they look at the distance between the car leading Pancho Carter's and Tony Bettenhausen, who is running second. It is about 1/3 of a second in time.
0.3 of a second this far in the race, as you said, coming to 500 miles. In Indy cars, that is quite amazing for them to be running this close after this long.
Pancho Carter and Tony Bettenhausen, 244 laps complete. We're coming up to completion of the lap number 245. We'll have 5 to go.
This is a point in the race. I know we've said it before, but it certainly bears saying again. If you're in the lead and you're running smoothly, you start listening to see what might be going wrong, and all of the things that have happened to you in your past, all of the things that have gone wrong begin to come to mind once again, and you wonder, will this part make it? Will that part make it? Or maybe you even know something. You've heard a little noise in the car, or you've watched one of the gauges flicker, and you wonder what's going to happen. Pancho Carter's wife, as she watches in this race, his wife Carla, they have one son who has been here at the track. In fact, he wears his father's helmet as they both ride around together on a bicycle in the pits. Quite a devoted and an excellent father.
Now working their way through lap traffic with 4 laps to go. Again, for Tony Bettenhausen or for Pancho Carter, the victory today would be their first in championship car racing.
Two Penske cars sitting in third and fourth. Rick Mears in third. Bill Alsop in fourth. Tom Bigelow in fifth. And Tony Bettenhausen's brother Gary is in sixth place.
And although Pancho Carter seems to be able to hold the margin over Tony Bettenhausen, many of the drivers will tell you at this point in the race they would just as soon be in second as to be in the lead, because then they can set up the leader to try and make that final pass. They could make it out of turn 2. They might want to wait and challenge out of turn 4, take him on the inside, and race him for the checkered flag.
Of course, the other side of the argument may be simply, can they keep up with one another? Is Tony Bettenhausen running flat out at this moment? I suspect that he is, and his job is to just try and inch his way up, but at the same time be careful while he does it. There's Carla. As she looks down, looks around, boy, she is pulling for Pancho. Look at the tension.
They come roaring past the start-finish line with 2 laps to go. Pancho Carter and Tony Bettenhausen.
Still running smoothly. Still a battle right at the close has not yet developed. These are the kart races that Pancho Carter has done well at in 1981. And now he is trying to pick up a victory. Running ever so smoothly. Now the white flag should be displayed to Pancho Carter as he comes to the line. And there it is, 2 miles. 1 more lap to go for Pancho Carter. If he can make it to the backstretch, he could almost coast to the finish, were it not for Tony Bettenhausen sitting right behind him. So Pancho Carter still has to watch those rear view mirrors as Bettenhausen will try and close up. But it seems a fruitless task now as Pancho Carter screams down the backstretch and into the number 3 turn. The checkered flag will be waiting for him as he comes off of this lap. Pancho Carter, the last turn, the last lap, less than half a mile now as he screams toward the checkered flag, and twin checkers are displayed to Pancho Carter, and now to Tony Bettenhausen as he comes by. Look at Carla, look, she's crying. She's so happy with this victory. Pancho Carter has come home the winner of the inaugural Michigan 500 for IndyCars.
It has been a long wait for Pancho Carter in his 8th year of driving championship cars, looking for that first win, and he picks it up in the Michigan 500. And an endurance test for car and for driver here today.
And what a tremendous comeback for him. Pancho Carter, who in 1977 was in an extraordinarily serious crash at Phoenix International Raceway during a practice test. And now he is here, the victor today. He was badly injured, worked hard to come back. Let's go down to Bruce Jenner.
Right now I'm with a very happy lady. Carla, congratulations. I noticed even after the win and all the cheers and everything, you still put down his last lap time, working right to the finish.
Our crew chief would kill me if I didn't get every lap. I can't even believe it. I'm so happy, and we've waited so long for this.
You certainly have, and you deserve it.
Thank you very much.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, what a happy lady.
And deservedly so, as Pancho Carter now can slow down, relax, and recognize that he has won the first 500-mile race for IndyCars at Michigan International Speedway. Pancho Carter in number 5. Slowly down the backstretch that for so many laps he cruised down at better than 190 miles an hour. Here's the unofficial order of finish. Pancho Carter wins. Tony Bettenhausen in second. Rick Mears in third. An excellent one for Tony. Bill Alsop, a fine finish 2 and 4th, and Tom Bigelow comes in 5th. Unofficial results. The 6th position, Tony's brother Gary. Scott Brayton comes home in 7th. Bill Kaliva stayed in the race all day long and manages to pick up 8th. Larry Dixon, after hitting the wall, stays out with hasty repairs to his car in 9th, and Bob Lazier in 10th.
And those 10 cars were the only 10 cars remaining on the track at the end of the race. And by the way, Bob Lazier has been voted as the rookie of the Michigan 500. And pulling into victory circle now it is here is Pancho Carter in car number 5.
He receives a standing ovation as he pulls in. A popular victory here today. Congratulations to Pancho.
Gary Gerould is there beside the car to get a quick word with him.
Winning the race in car number 5.
Set the trophy right here. Don't go away, gentlemen, because we're going to move it again.
Go ahead, Gary.
Pancho, I know you're unbuckling. I know this is one of those magic moments. 7 years ago at this racetrack, you were second. 5 times you've been second in your career. Now you've won one. You hear the ovation of the crowd. Your feelings?
Boy, it's just wonderful. I've been trying for a long time to do this, and it just really feels great. We got behind there with a spin, and I'm just amazed that we got going. The car worked beautiful. A lot of credit to the Alex Foods crew and the chief mechanic, John Caples, and the car owner, Alex Morales, and all the guys on the crew. They just did a great job. It was really easy to drive. It was like I said before the race, if the car had handle, you could go 500 miles here, and it wouldn't be too bad. I'm tired after running, but not that tired.
After that spin, did you think realistically you had any chance of winning this race?
No, not really. Kind of jokingly, I told John, I said, don't worry, John. I said, we'll get the lap back. And we just kept working at it until we finally did. And the car handled just beautiful, and the guys really did a great job preparing it. And I think that proved by the fact that we finished alone, and even with me abusing it a little bit in that spin. But it really was a great, a great day for me. The tires, the Goodyear tires lasted just perfect. I had no real problem with them at all. It was a perfect day.
It's one of those great comeback stories. Congratulations, Pancho. There's a young guy here that I know he's going to remember this day, too. And
I think he will.
All right, let's go back upstairs.
Okay. Give Daddy a kiss. Oh, don't you love the picture of his son? And that tells the story.
An unbelievable victory. A spin in the early going of the race, and it ends up as a victory, and tears in the eyes of Carla Carter.
We started the afternoon with 37 cars on the starting grid. We end up with 10, and we end up with a victor. And that is car number 5, driven by Pancho Carter, his first Indy car win.
It is a long road, 500 miles. Sometimes it seems like much further than that distance. It's been a disappointing day to many drivers, A.J. Foyt included. We hope that he recovers rapidly. But congratulations to Pancho Carter.
All right, and for the final thoughts of Bruce Jenner, let's join him. Bruce?
You were right about one thing. You say sometimes it's a long road. You say 500 miles for Pancho Carter. It took 8 years to get to this circle right now. So it's been quite a day for the summer season. I certainly have enjoyed bringing it to you, and hope you enjoyed our first live telecast ever of an Indy 500-mile race. Charlie?
We said it would be live and flag to flag, but we also said that last Sunday. But we completed